Good afternoon, everybody. This is Chris Osborne with First Indiana Robotics. This is our Friday virtual conference. We've got a lot of great content for you today. And today is Friday, which means it's Tiara Friday. So hopefully everybody out there wearing your tiaras in honor of our Tiara Friday. We're going to start off with a real quick reminder for everybody that this next week on Thursday, we want to make sure we get it out there that it is our virtual showcase, the award show for FRC, FTC, FLL, FLL Junior. Please make sure you tune in from 4:30 or 6:30, pardon me, sorry, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time to 8 p.m. Eastern Time next Thursday, April 30th, for our virtual showcase. We'll be giving out awards at the FRC, FTC level, honoring our FLL teams that had fantastic years, and then and some FLL Junior honoring. So make sure to join us. Next, we're going to start today with an interview with one of our student board of directors, Bella from 5010. Bella, you want to come on in, and Heidi? So I'll just start by introducing Bella, one of our newest members of our student board of directors from FRC 5010, Tiger Dynasty. And Bella, you've got Heidi with you. Why don't you go ahead and introduce and take it from here, and I'll make sure we get you any questions. If you're watching via Twitch, go ahead and use that Twitch chat to ask any questions you might have, and we'll try to get them into our speakers. So, all right, there you go.
Great, thank you. Hi, I'm Bella from Team 5010. I'm on the student board of directors, and here I'm with a National Instruments engineer, Heidi Frock. So Heidi, why don't you just quickly give us like a summary of what you do at NI and the kind of job you have.
So I've been with National Instruments now for 33 years. I started out as a hardware engineer at National Instruments. I have a degree in electrical engineering from the University of Texas in Austin. And so I started out developing hardware, and then I became a hardware manager after about 15 years. And now my job, I'm a business operation manager for our R&D global operations team. So I work on processes and tools for our global R&D groups to be efficient and effective. So I'm taking all my experience from being a developer through being a manager, and then helping other managers and other developers be more effective and efficient at National Instruments.
Okay, cool. So what types of engineers do you come in contact with at NI, or just what types of engineers are they really looking for?
So National Instruments has a wide range of engineering careers. We have hardware engineers who develop hardware. So if you've used the Robo Rio, our hardware engineers develop that product. We have software engineers who work on a wide variety of software. We have application software like LabVIEW, if you're familiar with LabVIEW. We have then driver level software, which is the software that works on the hardware. So there's software running on that Robo Rio. And then we have application engineers who work with our customers who have technical questions or have issues that need to be worked out. So that's our technical engineers, our technical support engineers. And then we have test engineers who test our products. So all of our products go through manufacturing and have tests run on them, and those test engineers develop the tests that run on those products. So we have a wide range of careers that engineers can be involved with. Oh, and I forgot, I'm sorry, the mechanical engineers. Each of our products have a mechanical engineer who then designs the enclosures and runs all the mechanical testing on all of our products.
So you mentioned that you work for the R&D branch, and you also mentioned briefly before we talked about recruiting. So what is that process kind of like for you and the people that you recruit?
Yeah, so I am actually the recruiting sponsor for the University of Texas. So each university that we recruit at, we have someone, an engineer who sponsors that university to our recruiting team. So part of my responsibilities there are creating all the events that we use on campus at the University of Texas. So for instance, we have a demo day where we bring in a bunch of our products and we demo them to the students. And so we're in the lobby of the engineering building so they can see our products. We also go to all the career fairs and talk to students there. And then we host sponsors and speakers at various club meetings. So for instance, I spoke at the Women in Engineering meeting last semester and told the students about, you know, what it's like to be an engineer at National Instruments, and gave them a presentation that was called Jumpstart Your Career, helping them with some tips and tricks of how to start out their career once they graduate. So anyway, so we do a wide range of those activities at various universities across the country. And I, you know, like I said, I work with National Instruments. I mean, I work at University of Texas, but we have other universities as well.
So for you personally, what is it like working like at National Instruments? Because for us in FRC, it's like a really big company for us because as you said, you develop a lot of our mechanics and our software. So what's it like just working at National Instruments?
So all of our projects have a team of engineers working on them. So for instance, a hardware product like RoboRio, we would have several engineers, hardware engineers working on the hardware for that product. So they would be designing the circuit boards, which are inside the product. Then we have a mechanical engineer who's designing the enclosure for the product, as well as all of our mechanical testing, environmental testing, thermal testing, durability testing, like, you know, do they drop it? They have a drop test and various tests like that. And then there's software engineers who are working on the software of the product, both the software that runs in the product, as well as the software that you use to access the product and program it. And then we have test engineers who work with that team then to come up with all the testing for that product to make sure it's a reliable product, and then also that it is reliable once it exits our manufacturing process. So all that whole team of engineers are working together, and they work together from the very beginning. We have a concept of an idea of a product that we want to design. So they will create prototypes to determine what that product should look like and show it to our marketing people and to management to get approval for their product. And then they will develop that product, design the schematics, the software, and they'll work through the product all the way until we're ready to release the product. And then when we release it, then they work with our marketing team to come up with the initial marketing materials like the pictures and the demos that the marketing team will use then to sell it to other engineers. So our team of engineers will work together anywhere from like 18 months to 3 years on a project, depending on, you know, the scope, how big of a, you know, design project that is. So we design small things, kind of like RoboRio, all the way to huge systems that are used to test semiconductors. Some of those semiconductor test systems take, you know, around 3 years to develop.
So as you mentioned before, you said there was some tips that you gave. Are there any tips that you would have for any upcoming engineers, especially our seniors who are now going into college?
So being part of First Robotics is a great first step to learning about engineering and what it's like to be an engineer, because you're basically going through those steps that I just talked about when you're working on your robot. You come up with your initial ideas, you then build up your system, and then you work on it to make sure, you know, work out all the bugs until it's ready to go, you know, to competition. So that is a great experience to get you ready for a engineering career. Once you do go to a university, I really encourage students to get involved in hands-on clubs at the university level. So similar to what you've been doing with First Robotics in high school, I really encourage you to go to and find those type of clubs at the college level and be involved with them. At the University of Texas, they have a several different type clubs. One of them is a solar car club. So they compete in competitions with other universities developing solar cars running on solar power. They also have the what's it called? It's the loop, the high-speed train that oh, I can't remember now what it was called. But anyway, but there's a team at National Instruments not at National Instruments, at UT. There's a team at UT that is working on a demo, and they actually went to, it's Elon Musk's competition. They went to one of his final competitions, with their prototype design. So really look for those hands-on clubs where you get to design and prototype hardware and software. Because when recruiters come to campus, they're looking for those people who've had those hands-on experiences. And today there's so many opportunities. I really encourage you to find those.
Yeah. So you also briefly said that you had attended a women's conference. So I was just wondering, how is it like being a woman in STEM, especially as your career? Because a lot with FIRST is we're trying to get more women in our program. So how's it just like being a woman as an engineer?
So I've actually never really, I've always viewed myself as part of the team and never viewed myself as different. And I think as someone, I think being part of a team and being part of a culture that values everyone, for who they are is really important. And so I think, getting involved, especially like when I was in engineering school 3 years ago, right? 30 years ago, there were only 5 women engineers in my major at the time. And so we stuck together, but we also felt like we were always part of the team. No one really treated us differently. And I think that's the main thing is, being part of the team, showing people that your stuff and you can be part of the team just like everyone else. And really there's nothing holding you back, if you go in. I think a lot of things that hold people back sometime are people mentally think that because I'm different, maybe I can't contribute. But if you take that step forward and show people that, yes, I know what I'm doing, I know my stuff, they will respect you for that and they will treat you as part of the team. So yeah, I learned that early being, a minority, within my major. And and so I think it's, the same thing is true regardless of what your minority status is. Once people understand that, yes, if you stand up and you show that you can contribute to the team and that you know what you're doing, then people will respect you for that.
So another question is just as a member of FIRST, how has FIRST personally impacted your life?
Yeah, so I was a FIRST Lego League coach for 14 years. So at National Instruments, we designed hardware and software that FIRST has used in several of their programs, FIRST Robotics and FIRST Lego League. So National Instruments has programs where we can learn how to be a coach and how to work with students. So when we first started that program, I jumped on board because I had daughters who were just entering 4th and 5th grade. And so I started out mentoring 5th grade robotics teams going to FIRST Lego League competitions. And they opened up a new middle school in our area. So when I found out that who the principal was, I went and met with the principal and used the school startup funds then to start up a new robotics team at the middle school level at that middle school. And I stayed at that middle school helping them out for 10 years until the main teacher there who was running the program retired. I told him when he retired, I'd retire from that since my kids had long gone, left that middle school. But I love the mission of FIRST Robotics. Bringing the excitement of sports to engineering, because I think the true heroes of our day are engineers who are designing all of this technology, even the technology, all this stuff we're using today for everyone to work from home. All of this is because we have engineers that have created all of these products and all of these technologies. So I think they're the true heroes in our society, and that's what FIRST is trying to get everyone to understand. So I just love that.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about this program is it's always a lot of fun and a pleasure to be a part of. So as you said, working remotely, how is that going for the National Instruments engineers? I know it's a lot easier probably for you guys to work at home, but like mechanical engineers, how's that working?
So National Instruments, most of our products are modular instrumentation, which means we have a chassis, which is a big box that you can plug test and measurement equipment into. So many of our engineers were able to put together a test system that they could take to their home and continue to do their work at home. I was thinking we need to really, once this is all over, people are taking pictures of their equipment at home, just showing the value of modular instrumentation that, future years, hopefully people then will realize that regardless of where you're working, you can take a National Instruments test system with you and you can test wherever you are. So we do have what we call enablers. We are able to allow a few critical people to be on site. So our bigger systems, for instance, our test systems for semiconductor, those are large, huge systems that weigh like over 1,000 pounds. So people couldn't quite take those home. So what we're doing is we're remote desktoping into those systems. And so engineers are testing, and then we have what we call enablers. We have 20 enablers on site, which are switching out hardware for those engineers so they can continue to test. We had a power outage actually at our building this week on Monday. And so then we had to have our enablers run around and reset all of our machines so that our people at home could continue to work. But yeah, so Microsoft's remote desktop is really coming in handy. People have used it in the past to just run tests from home, like when they're sick or something, but now we're all relying on it. And surprisingly, we've been able to stay pretty productive working from home with all of these technologies, that we have. If this had happened 10 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to do what we can do today.
Sounds great. So, you briefly talked about like NI and college students. Do you guys have any internships, like either around Texas or just in general, like in high school or for college students?
So we do have a summer internship program, and we are able to, this year, it's going to be a virtual program. So many companies are having to cancel their summer internships, but we are able to continue just showing what we've been able to do with our engineers virtually. We're going to do the same thing with our interns. In fact, I have a group of people gathering equipment now. In 2 weeks, we'll be sending out to all of our interns a laptop and the test equipment that they will need to do their internship from home. So I am proud to say that we are able to continue our internships. So we do offer internships for hardware, software, mechanical, and test, as well as our technical support engineers. So yes, we have a wide range of internships. So we usually interview students who have already been through 2 years of college, because all of our internships are based on what you learn in college. So you need that base level understanding of technology before you can really contribute on one of our projects. So I encourage all of you who are involved. We really like to see when we have previous first students who apply for our internships, to apply after you have 2 years. So once you get to sophomore status, when you're about to be a junior, look up National Instruments and apply for an internship. So like I said, I love having first students as our interns.
So, kind of cycling into more personal kind of questions, what's something you've accomplished that you're pretty proud of in your career? Because I know NI itself has accomplished a lot of things, but just you in general, especially as an engineer.
Yeah, so I'm real excited about my current role as a business operation manager in global operations. I started out, as a hardware designer. And when I first graduated from college, I always thought that's what I was going to do my whole career. I would design hardware, and I would, be happy designing hardware. Well, then as I started, down my career, after I'd been doing that about 10 years, I started mentoring interns and mentoring new engineers, and realized I really enjoyed mentoring others. And so I then sought out a path to become a manager. So I became a manager, and I was managing the engineers that were developing for one products of one product line. And that was real exciting because I was able to work with marketing to determine what new projects we were going to do. And I worked with those engineers to develop those products. Well, then I grew into a section manager role where I actually had a team of engineers who were working on a wide variety of products. And at that point, I had hardware engineers, software engineers, mechanical engineers, and some quality engineers. And so that was really exciting then, because I was working on multiple products that were part of a larger product line, and and I really enjoyed that role. Well, then this opportunity came up to join operations, where now I'm helping engineers around the globe who work for National Instruments be productive, and using those skills that I've learned, throughout my whole career to help them become more productive, and putting processes and tools in place to work as a global company working on products. And so anyway, so I'm just real excited that, I've been able through my career to grow into this role where now I'm working with people around the world. So in fact, next week, I'm hosting a virtual summit of engineers around the world where we'll be talking about these new tools and these new processes so that we can be consistent around the globe. I was hoping to do this face to face. I was supposed to be in Dresden actually next week, but we will be doing it virtually, and it will be awesome. So yeah, so that, I think that's, just getting to see the impact of what I've been able to accomplish, during my 30 years of my career so far, and what I'm planning to continue to do before I retire.
Yeah, so as you just mentioned, the reaching out so for FRC students, we know like the Robo-Rio, that's National Instruments, basically all of our hardware is National Instruments, but like, do you guys reach out to other major companies? Because you said that you also work with big machines. Do you work with smaller companies, or is it like a mix of both?
So the great thing about National Instruments products is that we do not design for one particular industry. We design tools that can be used to build up test systems for a wide variety of applications. So, so we're working with, first, for instance, on, the systems that you are familiar with, but then we're working with, as I've mentioned, semiconductor companies to build these huge systems. We're also working with universities on various products they're doing, or not products, but research that they're doing. So research systems. Something that's really exciting that we're part of is the CERN Hydro Collider, which is in Switzerland. They have this huge particle accelerator that they're using our products to control that whole system. In fact, it's the largest test system in the world. It's a 26-kilometer ring underground where they are accelerating particles and running tests. There's companies that are putting together huge telescopes that are using our equipment to align all of the mirrors in these huge telescopes to focus on whatever they're looking at up in the sky. So there's all these different applications that we are not specifically creating, but we're creating the tools that the engineers are putting together into these systems to solve their problems, and they can do it very quickly with our products. They can take all this modular instrumentation and put it together. Then they use our graphical programming language, which is LabVIEW, to program the system in a short amount of time compared to if they had built it all from scratch. It's really exciting. We're starting to put together materials about companies that are using our products to help try to find solutions during this particular situation. We have engineers using our products that are working on vaccines, for the COVID-19 virus. We have companies that are building ventilators using our products and coming up with solutions very quickly. So so if you follow National Instruments, we'll soon have a bunch of information about, these different companies that are using our products. And we're able to come up with solutions quickly because they were using our products.
Yeah, that sounds very, yeah, wow. So just from an FRC standpoint, what's first like around just in Texas or around NI? Because we know one of our world championships is actually held in Texas. So what's that like if you interact with any teams?
Yeah, so in fact, I just before this call, I was looking. We have every Friday they show an update of things happening next week, and I had the invite to the first virtual award ceremony, similar to what was just announced here for Indiana. They're doing one for Texas, so they keep all of us involved, letting us know what's happening in first in Texas, as National Instruments employees, and encourage us to attend. Our National Instruments NI Week, which usually happens in May. We've had to cancel it this year. There's a big first event that usually happens there where a bunch of people will come. And I've tried to go to several of the activities at those events. So yeah, they try to keep us well plugged in of what's going on as employees at National Instruments. So yeah, I'm gonna have to tune in next Thursday for the the first in Texas awards ceremony and see that.
So kind of cycling back again to another kind of personal question, what's like either an inspiring book or just a talk that you really enjoy that you would recommend, especially it doesn't really necessarily have to be about engineers, just in general, especially when we have kind of weird times like this during quarantine?
Um, let's see what. Yeah, so one of the books I've really enjoyed is Leaned In with Cheryl Sandberg. So I've done a book club on that, and a lot of her concepts that she's had, I think, has really helped me as I've grown my career. Getting into management roles um, and getting the courage to stand up and say, yes, I know what I'm doing, and I can take my seat at the table with the other managers, at the company. Um, and then just any, TED Talks on various things. I like to watch, various TED Talks. Um, can't think of, yeah, I just finished watching a whole bunch of them. I'm trying to remember who they were. Yeah, so I'm mainly focused now on management type things. Learning how to become a better manager and how to put processes together for engineers. Um, yeah, I'm about to start a book. Yeah, let's see if I can show my book. This is what I'm about to read, but I haven't read it yet. So we're looking at trying to put together chief of staff positions in place for all of our groups within National Instruments. We've never had our leadership and R&D has never actually had someone who was their chief of staff before. You may have heard, like, in government, they always talk about the person who's the chief of staff who basically handles everything for the leader. So we're trying to put new leaders in place. And so I'm about to start reading that book to try to help, but that's, not nothing that any of y'all would be doing right now, but that's my book that I have sitting there right now, ready to start reading. So yeah, so I try to
sorry, continue.
go on. Go on.
So you of course are part of the more like business side of things. So what are some like good traits that you really enjoy like seeing in your employees or that have the employees have developed through NI other than their tech skills?
Right. So there's several things I look for, especially when talking to students. The first one is taking initiative to do more than what your typical student would do. So for instance, joining student clubs, which are doing hands-on activities, taking the initiative to do that. And then once you get there, the second thing I look for is taking the initiative to take on leadership roles. So basically stepping up and doing more than what your average student is doing in, the different things you're involved with. So I really do encourage, again, students to be involved in hands-on clubs and then take on those leadership responsibilities, because you learn so much more when you're leading the team versus, just being a participant in the team. The other thing I look for is strong debugging skills, especially for technical jobs. So and you get that from hands-on experience. So basically when you're working on a technical problem, that you actually debug the problem down to the root of what's, what the issue is for the problem, not just trying a bunch of things until something works and then don't breathe, so, so when you're working on a robot, you may know what I'm talking about there. You finally get it working. It's like, nobody touch it, but we really don't know what we did, but hopefully it keeps working. So I'd rather see people, actually figure out what is the real problem and fixing the problem instead of just trying things until it works. So those are the three main things I usually look for. And when I'm, looking for a person for an internship or for a full-time job. So
can definitely relate to the debugging status. So so you mentioned that of course your business and that NI obviously isn't probably all engineers. So what other like professional positions are there at NI besides engineers?
yeah, so we hire a lot of different other types of technical people for our technical writer roles. So we have people who write all of our technical documentation, our website, our marketing materials. So people in those roles don't necessarily need to have an engineering degree, but we do like to have people that have technical degrees so that they can talk to technical people, because we sell to people who are involved in technical areas. So for instance, one of the ladies that helps us with our website internally, she has a biomedical degree. Yeah. So, but she is also very interested in graphic arts and, graphical things. And so, so we do look for people with technical type degrees, but not necessarily engineering. Our marketing people, a lot of them also have some kind of technical degree as well as some marketing background. And all of our sales engineers, however, we do try to hire engineers because they're selling to engineers. So we want our salespeople to also be engineers. So a large population, at our company are engineers because of that.
Yeah, and similar to that question, would you say being an engineer originally has helped you kind of connect more with the people that you work with, especially being like a business type of engineer around NI?
Yeah, so what's great about an engineering degree is that you can do a wide range of things with the degree. What the degree teaches you is how to think and how to solve problems. So, so if you have that background where you're always looking for solutions to problems, you can be successful in a wide range of, careers because you have that background of solving problems. So, so yeah, so I really do think that's why we hire a lot of engineers, is because they are good at solving problems and they have that way of thinking that keeps us all kind of more solution focused on everything that we work on. So including all of our business, everything we do is finding solutions to problems and helping our customers find solutions to their problems.
Cool. So, besides out of Texas, if you know, does NI actually have any other locations around the US or around the world?
Yeah, so we have sales offices all over the world. We have 8 engineering R&D sites around the world, and one of those sites being, in the US. And then we have sales offices all over the world. And in those offices all over the world, we also encourage people to be involved in their community in various ways, including in FIRST. So like we have a manufacturing facility in Penang, Malaysia, and they have a huge FIRST uh, involvement there. We also have a huge FIRST involvement at our other manufacturing facility in Hungary in Europe. And we also have sales offices, like I said, everywhere. The sales office also in China is very involved in FIRST. So, which is great that we have, involvement all over the world in FIRST, as well as just, engineers all over the world in National Instruments.
So, how would you say like the community in your own job is like? Because as you said, you felt like you're a working member of the team, but how has NI kind of endorsed that and kind of helped with anything like? How does the job feel to you?
So we're broken up into what we call divisions. So we have different product lines that are combined together into a division, and each division kind of has its own culture. So, and I think most companies are probably this way, where you feel like a small family, a small community within your division. You have your leadership of your division, and everything that we work on, we work with the people close to us in our division. And then those divisions all then make up a larger body. So like R&D is divided up into 6 different divisions. And then each division then has its smaller teams that work together on the products. The same is true across other parts of the company where they are broken up, into various divisions that then work together, to become a bigger organization. And each one of those, so people who have moved from one division to another or moved from one area, like from manufacturing into R&D, they'll say, they've noticed, there are cultural differences that really help you feel combined together as a team and as a family working together for one common goal.
Yeah, that definitely reminds us of a lot of some of our first teams around here. Briefly back previous question, you said that you did a women's conference. Would you say NI does a decent amount of advocacy for women? It seems like you guys are pretty equal and as if you were a family around there.
So I have been involved personally at the University of Texas in their Women in Engineering program. I've been a speaker, at several of their student events. They have an event every year where it's a dinner event where alumni come and mentor some of the students. So I've been involved in several of those activities. We also have a women's network at National Instruments that has monthly meetings. We just had a virtual meeting just a few weeks ago where we'll have a guest speaker come in and talk to, on just various topics. So that's really nice having that, the women's network, across all of National Instruments. Then I have the networking at the University of Texas. So there's a through engineering and electrical engineering, there's a group called IEEE, the Institute of Electrical Electronic Engineers, and I've gone to several of their women in leadership conferences. They had one in Austin last year that I went to. They were going to have one in San Diego this year that I was going to go to, but I'm waiting to see. I think it's going to be virtual. It's supposed to be in the summer timeframe. So what's great is there's a lot of organizations for minorities in engineering, both at companies. A lot of companies are starting those organizations, as well as in the industry. So, and then as well as universities. So I do encourage you to, as you leave high school and, at your universities, look for organizations you can be a part of. But then once you get to your, wherever you work for your first job, look for those organizations. I have a daughter, Rachel, who is a software engineer. She actually worked for a small company that did not have a women in technology club, so she started one. And I went and spoke once one evening at her club that she started. So so if there's not an organization, either at your university or at your first job, I really encourage you to take the initiative to start one. You can start out by just reading a book, she started out with the Leaned In book from Sheryl Sandberg with her club that she started at her new company.
Yeah, so actually kind of cycling off that, the student board is actually trying to get more women in STEM, obviously, and especially in FIRST. So do you have any thoughts or tips for either us or just anyone in general in FIRST to try to get more people either on their team or just involved in STEM?
Yeah, so I'm on the advisory board for Round Rock High School, and we've talked about this a lot, how to get more women students, involved in various, activities. So I think the big difference, I think, often when you look at technology between men and women is men like to build things and women like to help people. So if you really show how your organization is helping people, that will attract more women and more women students to, because if they see that link, and engineering, that's what engineering is we're solving problems and we're helping people. And if more, I think, women students understood that and could see how they can fit in to helping people through, through the area of engineering, I think more women would get involved. So focusing on that more than just, we don't just build robots, so like in FIRST, we don't just build robots, but we also are doing activities which are finding solutions to help people in their everyday lives. And that will attract, I think, more women.
Yeah, so as you said, with the women's kind of advocacy, would you say that NI is generally great with their advocacy? And also, is there any way that students that aren't from Texas could somehow get involved with NI? I know you said there was internships, but do you have any knowledge of anything else?
So I do encourage all of you, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I can talk to you about various things. You can ask me questions or stuff. So it's Heidi Frock from National Instruments on LinkedIn. But yeah, so you can follow. I try to post stuff about what's happening with National Instruments and about recruiting and stuff. But if you follow me on LinkedIn, then maybe you can get connected with some of the things that we're doing at National Instruments. So that's one way. But then also, just wherever you end up going to, college, seeing what, if a recruiter is coming from National Instruments to your university, and being sure to go to some of the events that we're hosting there. So we do host events, at universities all over the country. And that's another way you can learn more about us.
Sounds great. So kind of just final few minutes of questions. You said FRC really influences kind of like getting a job, especially as an engineer. So would you just have any tips for people in FRC? Like should, like you said, leadership, obviously, and I personally believe that FIRST does a lot of leadership,
Yes.
but like for like software engineers and stuff, should they, look at stuff like that, or should they kind of think more on the CS side? Because, as you said, you worked with LabVIEW, but we kind of work with that. So would that, I don't know, would working with the kind of instruments that you guys use gives people sort of advantage?
So really, it's not necessarily the equipment. We're not necessarily looking for people that have used our stuff exactly. We're looking for just people that have had previous experience with, different types of technology. So any kind of experience, hands-on experience, regardless of what it is, which software language or which, hardware you've used, I think any type of experience, hands-on experience is beneficial. So internships, any kind of internships you can, get involved with. It's difficult when you're in high school or as a freshman to, get those hands-on internships. That's why I really push, things like FIRST and getting involved in clubs, because you can get a lot of that hands-on experience, from those activities before you get an internship, and they help you because you already have experience once you get the internship. In high school, if your high school has, technology classes, software classes and things like that, you can get a head start before you get to college, if you can take some of those courses, or even community colleges offer software courses as well. If you just get your, C, C++, Java, those type of experience, before you get to college, that'll be really helpful.
Sounds great. Yeah. We have just about 1 minute left. Do you have any final tips for anyone?
So so I've really enjoyed being a part of your call today, and I just really encourage you to reach out to me if you want to reach out, if you have more questions that you weren't able to. I don't know if we looked at if there were any questions, but if you have any questions, please, reach out to me either about National Instruments, about growing your career, questions about engineering, please reach out. And like I said, continue to do what you're doing. You know, being part of FIRST, I think, is an amazing first step into a awesome career in engineering. So I really, I've really enjoyed my career in engineering, and hopefully that all of you can then also pursue a similar type career.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us, and also thanks to NI obviously for supporting us and giving us our hardware. It's always pretty easy to handle that kind of stuff. So thank you.
Great. Awesome. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Bella, for the great interview. Thanks for your time today. And yeah, we'll put links, Heidi, to our website, to some of the things you'd mentioned I put on the Twitch chat, how to connect with you on LinkedIn. And also I did grab some links to some of the things you had mentioned, some of the books and the Lean In book you mentioned, and we'll get some links out to our website on that. So great.
Awesome.
So yeah. Thanks very much.
Great. I enjoyed being part of this today. Thank you.
Yeah, we enjoyed having you. All right, we're going to transition now to our next conversation. Priya is going to come in, and we're going to talk about how do you become an MC or game announcer in FIRST. So we've got quite a few people here on the call that have MC game announcing experience. So Priya, I'm going to let you take it away, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Chris. Hello, everyone. My name is Priya. I'm from the First Indiana Robotics Student Board of Directors, and kind of we'll be talking about today is how do you become a game announcer or MC in robotics. So we'll be talking to our fantabulous panel here, and everyone will introduce themselves, but we'll kind of just be talking about their experiences, any tips they want to share, their favorite things. But for now, if Brian could introduce himself, that'd be great.
Sure. I am Brian Baylor. I'm the executive director of E3 Robotics Center up in Elkhart. And I've been involved with FIRST for the past 21 years now.
If Corey could introduce herself.
Sure thing. My name's Corey Bounds. I'm an alumnus of FRC Team 2903, the Neobots from Arlington, Washington. I graduated high school in 2011, and I've been volunteering since.
And Ryan?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Camphouse. I've been involved as a volunteer with FIRST for the past 10 years, and I'm an alumnus of Crimson Robotics Team 2526 in Minnesota.
Danny?
Hi, everybody. My name is Danny Blau. I, too, am an alumni of Team 1259 out of Pewaukee, Wisconsin. Graduated back in 2008, and I've been a mentor ever since.
Dave?
Hi, name's Dave Thomas. I'm actually in Ohio. I work for a software company called Highland, doing DevOps engineering. A alum of Team 964 out of Northeast Ohio, currently lead mentor of Team 7486 out of the Akron area. GA and game announcer and MC for probably the past 3 or 4 years now. Excited to be here.
That's awesome. And then we'll go Ruth, Rachel, and then Carl.
Hi, I'm Ruth Toomey, marketing specialist for Andy Mark, volunteer committee co-chair for First Indiana Robotics. I am an alumna of FRC Team 1735 from Worcester, Massachusetts. Graduated high school in 2006, so 2020 was my 15th first season. I've been volunteering since 2007. Tacoma World Championship then. Was able to do a lot of desk analysis stuff with RoboSports Network and as part of First Champs Live and the Festival of Champions and Play-by-Play. It's pretty cool stuff.
Awesome.
Hey everyone, my name is Rachel Baker. I'm currently a consulting analyst for Accenture up in Chicago. I am an alum of Team 3940 Cybertooth from Kokomo, Indiana. I now volunteer as a game announcer and MC, and also have done a lot of different things in FIRST, and I'm very excited to be here.
Hey guys, my name is Carl Landskren. I'm a double major in mathematics and computer science at Purdue University. I'm an alumnus from FRC Team 1747 and FTC Team 10133. And I've been, ever since I graduated, I've been mentoring. I currently mentor Precision Guessworks, which is comprised of FRC Team 1646 and FTC Team 17012.
Yeah, that's amazing. And for all our viewers that are outside of Finn, Carl and I actually game announced together for Cage Match for a couple of years in a row. So that's pretty fun.
Yeah.
So our first question for today will be, how did you become an MC or game announcer? Like, what was your path in first to either volunteering or getting involved in general? And anyone can answer. Oh, Danny, why don't you take this one?
Sure. So I got started. Actually, I think some of the first on mic work that I did in first was at a Lego League tournament. And so kind of went through there. I did some off-season stuff. And then I, kind of started my first regional or first kind of FRC event that I did was the Crossroads Regional. So I got to kind of watch and observe and kind of play backup to a couple of the guys that were doing that, doing there. And kind of slowly over time went from sort of that backup role kind of into the lead and kind of primary MC. And now I have the phenomenal pleasure to work with this wonderful cast of crazy characters. And it's super awesome.
Yeah, so my path is somewhat untraditional. I was a pit announcer, so I did many different roles in the Buckeye Regional in Northeast Ohio, up in Cleveland. And I was a pit announcer, but I had expressed interest previously in wanting to eventually start training, for game announcer and MC. And Josh Clark, who many people in Indiana are probably familiar with, he was filling in for our usual game announcer. But he was the only one scheduled, so he didn't have a break. And, it's tough when you're going all day and it's match after match. So he and the VC came around to the other side of the curtain and said, "Hey, Dave, we heard you were interested in, potentially doing game announcing. Want to come around front and watch a couple matches?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So replacement was found. I went up there. I watched Josh do his thing for one or two matches. And then he goes, "Okay, cool. So I think you got it." And this was in 2016. So not only was it my first match, it was my first match in 2016, which had a lot of different things you had to remember with the defenses. So I said, "That's a Cheval de Frise. That's the portcullis. That's a blah, 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 blah." Handed me the mic, said, "Cool, I'll be back in a couple matches. I got to go to the bathroom," and just left. I did not watch the game animation that year. I had no clue what the rules are. But, I got thrown into the fire. It was a little embarrassing, not knowing what to say or what to do in front of thousands of people, but obviously I liked it enough to keep doing it. So I wouldn't recommend that for anybody else, but it worked.
So I also, like Dave, kind of had a bit of a non-traditional start. It was not my first role being a game announcer when I first started volunteering with First. I had a lot of other roles that I filled initially. Like I did safety glasses for a while. I got kind of promoted to doing control system advising for a while. But then I just got really lucky that one year I was kind of approached by someone who was like, "Hey, I'm the game announcer for this regional. I'm moving away. You might be pretty good at this." So I had that opportunity there. And then I think probably the thing that really kind of helped me kind of solidify myself as a game announcer was I had the opportunity to work with Blair at the Snow Globe, the first regional in central Illinois. And really having the opportunity to kind of learn the ropes from him really helped me kind of figure out that this was something that I liked doing. And then down the road, he saw me once at Champs. I wasn't supposed to be an announcer, but someone no-showed and he was like, "Hey, I know you're competent and you follow directions. Come help us out." And then ever since, it's kind of been what I've been doing, and it's been a lot of fun.
Ryan and I actually got our start at the same regional. So Ryan's talking about the 2013 Midwest Regional when we both got our first go on mic. I also had a variety of different roles coming up. Similarly to Dave, I did not know Dave was a pit announcer. I was also a pit announcer at the 2012 Midwest Regional. From there, I also did a lot of time reffing. I've reffed a ton. I was reffing while Ryan was game announcing with Blair at the Snow Globe. I also did safety glasses at the World Championship my first time volunteering there, which was a blast because I was in like the junior FLL area. So it was super exciting. A lot of my early experience was in FTC, First Tech Challenge. I really like having a lot of fun with the creativity of First Tech Challenge events. I also think I learned a lot while I was starting to work on learning how to game announce. I was doing an internship at Chicago's Museum of Science and Industry, where my job was essentially to game announce science. So I would be on a stage in front of like 600 kids, like mixing calcium carbonate. I'm not a chemist, I'm sorry. But it makes acetylene, and then you light the acetylene on fire, and I would explain what was going on. Calcium carbide. Thanks, Ryan, in the chat, let me know. But it was really, really fun, and we'd do like explosions and talk about that kind of thing. So I think a lot of my experience was there. And then the year after the Snow Globe, the next venue for the Central Illinois Regional, I also had the pleasure of working with Blair as my MC, which was a lot of fun. So a lot of little steps along the way and getting a lot of practice in a lot of places. I'm also a teacher, so I get to game announce some science in my day job too.
I would say that I had a kind of normal and traditional path, so a little different than a lot of people who have shared their stories already. I was pulled in by Dana Davis in Kokomo, Indiana when I was like 14, 15 in high school. She was the VC for the FLL Kokomo event. And she was like, Rachel, I know you can talk. I'm gonna put you on a mic. You're gonna be the MC and the host for this event. And I was like, do you think I can do that? She was like, yes, and you're doing it. We need someone, you're up. So I did that, and I did that FLL event and a couple of other FLL events for a little bit. And then someone pulled me into doing FTC stuff. So then I did FLL and FTC. And then after that, I think it was Renee who pulled me in to start doing FRC stuff. So my path has been littered with people who have paid attention and believed in me and taken a chance on me to pull me up to each different level and advocated for me when I was new and young and didn't have a ton of experience, which meant a lot. But I loved having that opportunity to go through the progression of programs because I think it taught me a lot. Like, I don't have a hard time coming up with things to say when I'm on the mic, because when you get your start doing FLL stuff and neither robot is doing anything on the field, and you have some elementary school kids who are freaking out and you have to fill space with your words, that was a really good lesson to figure out how to get on the mic and fill time in high pressure situations. And then also do FTC, where it's a little bit more action, but you still need to kind of ad lib a bit, and then go to FRC where you have to balance a lot of talking and strategy and explaining. And so I had a really ideal experience for anyone who is aspiring to do emceeing or GAing. I would recommend starting out with FLL, FTC, FRC, because I think it is super helpful.
So Rachel is almost entirely to blame for me getting into emceeing and game announcing. But before Rachel dragged me into guest MC at the 2019 Tippecanoe District, I spent about 4 years doing web shows talking about FRC and the different aspects of the game, the different strategic implications of what happened previous week to the next week. So there's a bit of an outside-in background, understanding how the game happened from the viewer standpoint to coming in and guest emceeing at that Tippecanoe event. I was actually the AV director at that event, and they're just, Ruth, you can totally do it. And I was so nervous, and Rachel was amazing and offered so much moral support, and it was really cool. And then I helped MC at an FLL tournament the previous year, or this past fall, and ended up one of the Indiana district events needed somebody to sign up and help flesh out the team, and I said, yeah, you know what? Sure, I will jump in and do that. And that's kind of how I got there.
Awesome. So my start was kind of similar-ish to Rachel's. The first event I ever did was actually with Priya. And I was being mentored kind of by Mike Taylor, who by far is one of my favorite people to interact with game announcing stuff, just because of the type of energy he comes in with it. And he taught me a lot of awesome, amazing tips along the way. And then I was super stoked to do my second event, Boiler Bot Battle. And the day before, I was actually at a conference at Google, and I talked so much that the next day I actually completely lost my voice. And so I didn't get to do that event. But it was definitely one of those like, oh, I need to like make sure I take care of my voice before events. I did some FLL as well. And then I did FTC. My first FTC event was with a guy named Patrick. He was a 71 alum, and by far has been my favorite person to game announce FTC with, because of his energy and how well we could manage two fields back and forth, which I think was really, really unique. And then my first official regional was with Corey and Ryan, actually. It was the 2019 Penn event up in Mishawaka. So that was a lot of fun, and I don't think I could have picked two better game and out or MCs to hear and train with and stuff. So that was really awesome.
So for me, I got my start back in officially in 2006, really volunteering more of along the lines of the first LEGO League component. So that's kind of where I started and kind of where I continued. And then in 2010, I was actually thrown into a tournament director role about a month and a half out from our event. And so we had to quickly kind of scramble and get everything into place for making sure that that was up and running. And part of that was me and some of the other co-directors, we didn't really have any official MC or game announcer. So then we were also not only thrown in as tournament directors and judge advisors, but we were thrown in as MCs and game announcers. So that's where it really kind of started for myself and a few of our other staff. And as that expanded out, we added off-season events for First LEGO League, FTC qualifying tournaments, and even junior expos, where we have kind of helped fill those roles kind of going forward, just because we had such a low amount of volunteers at the time, and it's grown up to where now we can kind of give those game announcer and MC roles out to others within our area, because our volunteer base has kind of grown.
Yeah, absolutely. So our next question for today will be, what is your favorite event or region to MC? And we're going to start with Corey.
Thanks, Priya. So my favorite in-season event is the first championship. Quite a few people on here have also volunteered either on mic or off at the first championship. In-season, phenomenal. You get to see everybody. Quality of play is incredible. It's really, really fun. In terms of overall, I would probably say my favorite event in a given season on and off is Indie Rage. In Indianapolis, a good Finn event. It is so much fun. Rachel and I have been tearing it up at Indie Rage for the last like 4 years at this point. And it really is an incredible event. For those who don't really know, Indie Rage is a women's and girls off-season first FRC competition, and it is so much fun. Rachel and I get to have a lot of creativity. This year we really worked hard on our playlists, which was a really good time. It's a blast. It's really, really fun. And I look forward to it every single year.
So I feel like I should say Indiana is my favorite region to MC or volunteer in, but I've got to throw it to New England. There's so much history out there. There's a lot of fantastic MCing and game announcing out there. Just the whole district across the board. Indiana is a very, very close second, but I spent 13 years coming up through New England and doing all of those events out there. My all-time favorite event is Battle Cry at WPI, which is the second longest running off season in FIRST history. But, again, a close second is the Indiana State Championship. It's a smaller, more intimate championship, but there's so many good teams and the energy is just so high in those venues. I get chills walking into those events. But yeah.
So I've since 2006, I've been to a lot of different events all over the country, including a couple of the championships. So it's kind of tough for me to whittle it down to just one event or one area. I will have to say it's not just because I'm on a First in Indiana stream, but I really do like the family feel of the Indiana. I'm gonna say Indiana First group. Because it just seems like no matter which event you go to, everybody knows everybody. Even me as a sort of outsider now, essentially adopted as part of the family. I really feel like people really care about every volunteer who works there, not just the quote unquote key volunteers, but, all the way down to the queuers and the safety glasses attendants and everybody. And I really love that. I will have to say, however, I've only been there once, but the San Francisco regional is actually really nice because of the venue, because of the very, very talented MCs that they have there, including Nick Hamas, which we're going to hear from soon. But the sunset, like that's something I wasn't planning on. The sunset and the cookies at San Francisco are amazing. And so I do have to shout out the San Francisco regional. And of course, I've been to many other places, but I think Indiana and San Francisco are my two favorite events.
This is a really tough question, like a lot of people have already said. I could say champs, like Corey already mentioned. I could say the Penn event from a couple years back that Carl was talking about a little bit earlier, but I think consistently one of my favorite events every year is actually the Illinois State FTC Championship. So yeah, I know this is like the Indiana conference, but being an Illinois guy, it was one of the events that I first kind of got the chance to really have a large role at. And it's something that is just a lot of fun every year because since and I do that event with Corey, since we've been doing it for quite some time, the teams there have gotten to know us really well, and they know that like we really want to use our announcing there as a way to amplify like their efforts and what makes them unique. So the teams are really awesome at being able to share with us and be open with us about the really cool things they do. And it really makes it a fun time because it's just like an entire day devoted to talking about how awesome these teams are and helping all these parents and public community members there who don't really know what's going on see that like this is pretty darn incredible. It's not just little blocky robots moving around on the field. There's just so much effort, there's so much perseverance, there's so much ingenuity happening here, and it's cool to be the storyteller of that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we have so many stories to share with like this huge panel, but I thought a good question for like this group of people, like all these veteran MCs, would be like, as someone who wants to become like a MC, game announcer, like what is your one tip that you wish you knew when you were starting out? So I'll have Brian start with this one.
For this one, coming from my background, and it goes across all four kind of programs, is get to know the other volunteers at the event really well, because no matter if you're doing something with First Lego League Junior or First Robotics competition, each event is going to be a little bit different, and each program offers kind of a variety of things. And sometimes you have to change stuff just like at the drop of a hat. And knowing kind of those volunteers, especially over kind of the multi-day events, gives you that ability to kind of switch directions very easily with them, and kind of makes that a very fluid transition as you go through stuff. So definitely getting to know those volunteers and those people that you're going to be working with and build that relationship helps.
So I have a little bit of one tip for each game announcing and for emceeing. One for game announcing is to keep in mind that not only are you talking to your friends in first who are up to their necks in first knowledge and have been doing build season and such, but I like to think that I'm also talking to all the grandmas on the live stream, right? So you're talking to people and trying to explain what's happening on the field to people who might not be familiar with the game, might not understand what's happening. So not only do you have to explain what's happening, but also why and what that means. Another tip for emceeing, similar to what Brian said, get to know the other volunteers, but as an MC specifically, you are in charge of controlling the pacing of the event. So it's really important that you have excellent rapport and relationships with your head ref, with your FTAs, with your game announcer, whoever you need to talk to make sure that the matches happen. You need to make sure that you're good at communicating with them, because if they're frustrated or if they feel like the pacing is a little off, you need to figure that out with them and make sure that everyone's happy.
Yeah, I would second that. That's really a big thing. I really kind of see that the energy is more for the people who know what's going on. The content is for the people who don't really know what's going on as much. But the one tip that I got that I really like and has helped me the most was actually from Mike, and it wasn't even at my first event. It was at probably the event 1 or 2 years later. But he just looked at me and he said, "Carl, stop it with the WWE voice. Don't puke into your mic. Just speak. Just talk. You've got a good voice. Just speak." And honestly, that was one of the things that like really was like, you're right. You know, I don't need to try and be this mumbo jumbo, have a weird voice. Oh, you were going to do this, that, you know, but just focus on talking about what's going on, being excited about when exciting things happen. And that will get you really, really far. You don't have to try and do anything fancy. It doesn't sound good over most of the school PA systems anyway.
So I'll kind of echo what Carl was saying. He sort of stole my thunder a little bit. I was gonna say, you know, announcer voice is a little overrated. So, but kind of dovetailing off of that, like, be yourself. Like, you know, somebody who kind of gets into this, you know, probably has a bit of a personality, you know, to begin with. Just let that shine, let that, you know, show. Be yourself out there, and that will resonate with, you know, the audience, you know, be it, you know, the hardcore firsters, you know, the people watching on the stream, you know, whoever the audience is. Being yourself and really being genuine to that is something that's going to really resonate well across all of those different audiences.
Yeah, and so right now we have 3 minutes left. So I have one last speed round question for you. Who is your favorite MC, except for yourself, of course?
Okay, well, since I can't say myself, John Dar Bradshaw. I'm sure many of you know him. Works out of the Cleveland area. I've worked with him many, many years. Close second, Josh Goodman out of upstate New York.
Anyone can go.
This is a little vague, but my favorite MC was whoever did my FLO events when I was young. For the longest time, I thought it was Josh Clare. And then one day I went up to him and said, "You inspired me to be who I was." And he's like, "No, I didn't. That wasn't me." So if anyone knows, let me know.
I'm going to give a big shout out to Andy Grady from Manchester, New Hampshire. He was the voice of my childhood, voice of Einstein for so long. Close second is John Dar. Close third is Sir Charles out of Georgia. I don't know if he's announcing anymore, but can't get It's Einstein Baby out of my head. Just amazing.
I'm going to give a shout out to Tyler Olds. He did the Wisconsin regionals. He was, you know, the voice of my childhood, you know, doing all sorts of stuff. Even go back, he did Lego tournaments that I was at too. So big shout out to Tyler.
Shout out to Corey. She is my personal favorite, also on the call. Very honored to have her as someone that I have not only been able to look up to and learn from, but also become friends with and be partners with Rage and other competitions. Listen to her breath control and the way that she enunciates things and pronounces things all of you aspiring MCs and GAs out there, she is the best in the game in terms of just her vocals and how she uses that to really set a presence.
Oh, thanks, Rachel. I immediately thought of Stephanie. I don't know how to say her last name, so I'm not going to say it incorrectly, but she's an alumna from Hawaii. And she and I, the first time I game announced Einstein, she was my MC, and we worked that together. That was 2 years ago, and it was incredible. She was so supportive of me. We were both a really good team, helping each other get through this brand new thing that we had not really done before on a stage that big.
I guess I'll go next. I would probably say Janelle Greger from down in Florida. I think a big part about being an MC and a game announcer is like my favorite MC game announcer isn't necessarily like based on their ability. It's more based on like my experiences working with them. And I've always had a lot of fun working with Janelle. The two of us would work together to help do some of the field side interviews during the Einstein coverage. And that was always just a lot of fun. And we worked really well together. And I think she does a really great job and really cares a lot about FIRST and the students involved.
Well, I think some people stole a couple of my answers, so sorry. But kind of going back to it, the two people that always kind of when I see them game announcing or emceeing or reviewing, one is Karthik, just kind of the personality that he has and bringing that right across the live stream to the viewers at home. And then of course, Blair. I mean, just seeing him, the way he handles champs and finals on Einstein, it's just flawless. Down to the final minutes and to the buzzer and even announcing the winning score. So both of those are people that I really see as very strong game announcers.
We also have Renee on the call now, our president of our lovely Finn. Would you like to share your favorite MC, Renee?
Oh my goodness. I didn't realize that was going to be one of the questions. I mean, as someone who actively recruits MCs to my state, I think it would be a shame to single anyone on this call out, because I have literally recruited you to multiple events every single year, because all of you are sitting, there, and it's literally like, hey, what event are you doing? Do I need to buy you honey sticks? Like, can you please come? Like, I'll get you a pop mic, like brown M&Ms. I got you, Ryan. Like all of those different things, we're on it. I would like to say we did have a question from Twitch, which was someone from Indiana University who came up to here from Florida, and they have done MC and game announcing there, and they were wondering what steps they should take to get involved here in Indiana. And I think the funny part is, one, they need to meet Priya, who will be going to IU in the fall. And two, I'd love to get in touch with them via our info@indianafirst.org email, so we can recruit them, get them lined up, and get them trained in, so we can cycle through some more of our talent team.
Yeah, of course. And thank you for sharing all of your stories. I know this was a really short segment, but I hope to see all of you once again once competitions get started up. And now we are going to transition into another popular MC, Nick Hamas. Devin from the student board will be interviewing him. So thank you to everyone who came onto the stream today. We really appreciate all your hard work. And I'm going to pass it on to Devin now.
It's funny because Nick is another one of our MCs who's come to town before. So really, we should have just invited him on an hour earlier.
Thanks, Renee.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Nick. And like Priya and Renee said, this is really a great conversation to, follow our last session on how to become a game announcer MC, because you of course have quite a history of that yourself. In fact, that's probably how our Finn audience knows you best also. I know I met you for the first time during a somewhat unprecedented blizzard in March of 2018 when we were doing the game announcing for our Plainfield district event. And then a few months later, I saw you again under much sunnier and warmer conditions, which were preferable for me, when you were hosting the First Legally Global Innovation Award in California.
Yeah.
So we're very excited to have you here. But we will get back to your current FIRST involvement in a bit, because once upon a time, FIRST was involved in a robotics program called CARD, which is the Collegiate Aerial Robotics Demonstration, right?
Yep.
And that marks the start of your involvement with FIRST. And it sounds like a pretty crazy and fun time. So first of all, can you maybe tell us what college you went to and then how you became part of this somewhat short-lived FIRST program?
Yeah, I mean, it's fair to say I think that it was like almost a FIRST program. So I was a freshman at the University of Minnesota in 2011, and well, the 2010-11 year. So I remember it was my December, like this friend of mine in a calculus class was part of this robotics group. And she's like, hey, we're doing something where we're building a flying robot and we don't have enough programmers. And me, a freshman in computer science, goes, okay, I can help with that. So it turned out that like what this was I believe the official word was a demo program, where we put on a demonstration at the 2011 championship. And it was really, really cool. It was about the size of an FRC field with like there was netting along all the walls because we had flying robots. And basically there were robots that were driving around, very recognizable like FRC scale ones. And then there were flying robots that were playing RFID tic-tac-toe. So it was a little bit like the, I believe, 2008 game, where they were trying to like play tic-tac-toe and maintain control of all of these stacks. But instead of putting Tetras on, they were putting on like RFID signals. And it was really cool.
Oh, that sounds like so much fun. I mean, I'm a senior about to graduate high school, and you know, personally, I would love a college level FIRST program.
Yeah.
I know there's still plenty of ways to stay involved, and I know a lot of our students are hoping to stay involved with FIRST while in college as either a mentor or volunteer. Is that something you were able to do in addition to your being on your CARD team?
Yeah, I mean, so what we did was the first year, like we were full in on CARD. There were, I believe it was 10 schools that year who were at the demo. And that was like a really intense year that I would later come to understand felt a lot like an FRC build season. And the year after that, like it was a little bit challenging. Like FIRST had decided not to adopt the program officially into the family. So it sputtered off a little bit and we started like jumping into other things as well. But by that point, like I had gone to the 2011 championship and like kind of figured out what FIRST was. And I'm like, oh my God, this is really cool. So I had kind of spent my second year, Renee and Danny, who were at the time at University of Minnesota and were like a big part of running this organization, then called Go First, who was actually participating. Like they had taught me a lot about like the culture of FIRST. I'd started going to events. I was just loving it. And I wanted to start mentoring a team. I'd started volunteering. So my junior year, I was the vice president of Go First. And we got an email from this team in St. Paul. Like they had a new head mentor who was just brand new to the program. And she's like, I need help from somebody who like knows how FIRST works. And I go, okay, this is a good opportunity. So I ended up mentoring that team for 2 years while I was like an upperclassman in college, which was, first of all, really a cool experience, like going from sort of somebody on the sidelines to volunteer to being a mentor who actually like knows something. But yeah, I was doing at that point kind of all three.
Awesome. That's definitely, it's good to know that you can like manage doing all three of those things while in college. But then fast forwarding after college, you took a job with Google and moved to Mountain View, California. Google just sounds like a really intriguing place to work. I got to explore the campus a few years ago. And one thing I really loved was the fun and colorful Google bikes that employees would hop on whenever they needed to like get around campus. But I think it would be great if you could just share what the Google culture is like and maybe what you love most about your job.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like Google is very, very collaborative. like we're ultimately trying to solve really hard problems that just one person can't like alone. So I think that just by itself drives a lot of it. And it's very like bottoms up. I've had a number of opportunities to like talk to executives, excuse me, and like actually do things that like feel like I'm having a true impact. And that is something like a lot of companies are very rigid and hierarchical, and that just wouldn't be okay. But I think a place like Google, where it's a little more democratized, where like some, you know, junior fresh out of college IC can have a meaningful impact. Like, I think that's something that to me seems to be fairly unique in the corporate world, or at least uncommon. And what was the other part of that?
And like, what's just like your favorite part about your job and the work that you do?
Yeah, I mean, I think my favorite thing is like, there's always a new challenge. Like I go, okay, I'm working on this, I'm figuring this out, I get it done, I get everything shipped. All of a sudden there's a new problem. And I'm like, well, I'm glad I did a couple of the things I did before, but I should have changed a few too. And like, it's both a learning experience, but also like, it's an opportunity to always be growing, always be thinking about like how to solve harder problems, how to solve things at stupidly high scale. And I love that part about it. Like everything is hard and new and in impressively huge numbers.
Awesome. Well, you know, everything you just said there is reminding me about the first culture and what our teams are having to go through. But do you see any other similarities between working with people professionally and working with first teams? And like, are there similar challenges or a similar dynamic that you experience maybe?
Yeah, I mean, while I would say there are some things I could contrast as well, I think one of the things that is, again, like it's uncommon is the focus on like values and how we do things in addition to like what's being done. Like there's definitely a whole language around it and ways in which it sometimes gets a little bit like opaque and abstract, but like we talk a lot about like gracious professionalism and first and like cooperation and sort of thinking about how you treat others. And at Google, we talk about like googliness and being googly. But I think like that common theme of like treating others the way you want to be treated, being empathetic, like acting in good faith, that you don't see everywhere. Like, I think that's a really strong common thread. And also, as I was talking about a little bit earlier, like it's just very collaborative by nature.
Yes, I love that you brought up the core values. I think that's really what sets First apart.
Yeah.
And it's my favorite thing to talk about when it comes to the First program. But building off of that a little bit though, what kind of things would you contrast about it, since you mentioned that?
Yeah, I mean, I think like looking at First holistically, like I think a lot of it is, there was a great analogy the wonderful Pat Fee gave me a couple years ago about comparing FTC and FRC, where FRC feels very much like sort of a big corporate type, like that's kind of the blueprint, where FTC, like it's a small team, like everybody has to do everything. Like it's more like a small company or like a startup. And I think just kind of the way that everybody does everything in FTC and FLL, like while there's a little bit of that at Google, like a lot of people have a lot of skills and can do a lot of unique things. But at the same time, like everybody kind of has their own piece of the pie. No, I did not mean to voice search Google Assistant. Like everybody has their own piece of the pie as well. And like, I feel like Google kind of working there is between the two in a way, like between those two idealized blueprints. And I think there's commonalities across both, but obviously like the two are very different and there's differences both ways.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I really like that comparison with the startups versus the corporate.
Yeah.
But moving on, what maybe surprised you most when you started working for Google? Maybe besides the outrageous cost of living in Northern California.
Oh man, that was absolutely number one.
Yeah, my family's all from California, so we understand that.
Yeah. the cost of living tripling is noticeable. But yeah, I mean, I think there's so many things that, like, I think there's a lot of the world that, like, you sit down and think about, like, how would I expect this to be? If you really, really think about it, you can kind of get close. But if you haven't really had time, or you don't really have like the depth to think about it, you don't go, oh yeah, but it's obvious in retrospect. So, I mean, I think like how developed everything at Google is, like, there's a lot of like little pieces of like the developer infrastructure that people have thought about every little case and have optimized it to make it maybe not the easiest thing to use, but pretty darn easy to use for how powerful it is. And a lot of that stuff like has become open sourced, like Bazel, the compiler at Google. That was one of the things that really impressed me with how powerful and how scalable it was. But just all the little things that somebody has put so much attention into, because at a company that big, doing something really, really well and optimizing that is actually worth doing. And I thought that was really cool. And that was noticeable to me.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Google is just like this huge powerhouse, right? So it's cool to hear about all like the intricate little details of
Yeah.
But it sounds like your work keeps you very busy. But I know you spend a lot of time supporting teams too. So maybe could you talk a little bit about how you balance your work and mentoring and volunteering?
Yeah, I mean, I think the honest answer, and I think a lot of experienced first volunteers will tell you the same thing. It's really hard. Like there's a lot of priorities and a lot of things to do, and you only kind of have so much attention. I've actually seen, I think what volunteer role you spend your time in actually has a big impact. I was like thinking about this with respect to like FTAs and MCs kind of being on extreme ends. Like an FTA who works for one event in a district, they're putting in at least 3 days of solid work. Where like an MC can come in the day of competition starting and be there for 2 days. And in regionals, like as we have here in California, that it's even more extreme. So like how much you have to put in, I think is one of those factors. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it has been trying to focus on like what I can do well. And I've had a couple of periods where I did burn out a little bit. And certainly like the end of the season and spending some of the off season just resting up and recuperating and all of that self-care time has been something that I found invaluable. But also like I've spent some of my time this past year because I've stepped back from mentoring this year because last year it was a little bit too much. I've spent a lot of time like working on sort of developing the volunteer base out here and supporting some of the new and upcoming MCs and game announcers, trying to get them more FTC events, just trying to be very intentional about like making sure that Nick Does Everything is not anybody's plan. Because at one point it kind of felt like it might be. And like trying to give other people more opportunities as the program scale, because that's something that, and maybe this year it won't be as true as it has been in the past, but that's kind of something that's always been true. Like, well, next year there'll be more events, we'll be more people, we'll find more people, but if you don't find more people, those same volunteers have to do a lot of events. So I've really been trying to support the volunteer base. Even like when I was mentoring, I helped find and recruit a new mentor who was able to do a lot of the stuff I was, just so that I didn't have so many things on my plate. And I've had to be, one, my team at work is tremendously supportive of what I do. I would not be able to function without them being so supportive, but also like being very honest with them. Hey, in March, you're not going to see me very much. And all of that. And I think just being very transparent about here's my limitations as I see them. Here's what I'm doing. What can other people do? And just trying to manage and balance my own workload so that I don't burn out too bad.
Right. Well, definitely, I agree with you. Like setting those boundaries is definitely very important. And I also have to say, we definitely, the first community definitely appreciates people working to build up our volunteer base. That's really, we couldn't do this program without all of the hundreds and hundreds of volunteers that we have. And we're just very, very grateful for that. But I just want to mention the first community, we're still struggling with the loss of Dr. Woody Flowers. And I think we all can agree that his impact will continue to shape our program. But I wanted to know, do you have any fun Woody stories or interactions with him that you might want to share with us? Or can you
Yeah.
how he's impacted, maybe how you look at the world?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, like as I was seeing coming into first, like trying to understand what is this thing I've gotten myself into back in 2011. Like a lot of the stuff, I'm like, robots are cool. Like that's what I came for. They had me, actually, this is the other fun part of the story for at least the programmers in the audience. Like I was doing OpenCV coding on this little tiny little microcontroller that had, I think it was an 800 megahertz CPU. Like it was super tiny. And like that was exciting and got me in. But I started hearing like what Woody Flowers was talking about and how he was seeing the world and what First's position in it really is. And like I think sort of that revolutionary zeal, as it were, like I think that's kind of what hooked me in some sense. Like that and the community that's built up around it. But no, in terms of cool stories, so I've been for 3 years. This would have been my fourth. I've been one of the game announcers for First Tech Challenge at the World Championships. And one of the things Woody always did was he would come during like sort of the mid playoffs and he would be one of the speakers in the award ceremony for FTC. And one year we had a couple of delays, things were going a little bit slowly. So one of the very important roles that First staff have had at championships are like, sort of being the person who minds the schedule and helps like Woody and Dean and whoever the other sort of key VIPs are, like sort of being a handler who helps them move on to the next place when they need to be there. And the person who's helped Woody for years and years was somebody that I know. And she brought him up to me and we started talking. And it was, I think it was close to an hour. And like, he asked me what I do. I told him about my job at Google. And like, one of the big things that is a major theme of my job has been like sort of automating tasks that people are doing so that they can focus on like more interesting tasks, like focus on the thought work rather than things that just have to happen. And like, I talked to him about this and we started talking about like the role of automation in society and how it's transformative and can help people, but it's dangerous. And like hearing his perspective on it really informed me in a lot of how I think about that. And just how automation is a powerful force, not necessarily purely a good one. And that we have to, through our intentions and through our actions, make it good. And he sort of really informed me something. And it was just this little moment, like we were talking, but I see that as really important to me personally. And yeah, that's, I guess, my Woody story.
Yeah, well, I think that's really cool. That's definitely something. I think balance was always something really important to Woody Flowers, and that's something he talked about a lot, even just with gracious professionalism, like balancing the kindness and the competition and everything like that. So it sounds like a really cool conversation to have with him.
Oh, it so was.
Oh, I bet. And to have that memory, I think is just really, really cool. But since core values were so important to Woody, what's your favorite core value? And maybe in what ways do you see it used among your Google employees in the work that you do every day?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to pick a favorite. But I think the one that really the one that kind of speaks to me today, at least, is like impact. Especially like all the things I've been seeing. We have, I think, 7 or 8 teams locally, either FTC or FRC, who have been like working on PPE, like trying to, well, we can't do robots, so let's do something for the community. Like that just inclination towards impact, trying to make the world a better place. And I mean, that is, impact is one of the like favorite vocabulary words at Google. But at the end of the day, like, and I literally had a conversation like in a meeting this morning talking about like, we have this big idea. How do we make sure that what we're doing is the right thing? Like that it's the right thing for Google, that it's the right thing for everybody. and like thinking about not only what are we doing, but what are the effects of that? What are the second order effects of that? And how do we make sure that it keeps being the right thing to do? And I see that just as much in my professional life as I see like first teams doing that, especially those who are doing chairmans. But I've had the unique opportunity of being a judge at some basically off-season events for FRC, and I remember talking to one team who they didn't even think about it in terms of talking about chairmans, but they had been working with a couple of kids who needed like prosthetic limbs and trying to help one have a wheelchair that was a little bit better for them and customizing it. And it's not like we want to do this for chairmans. It's literally like we can do something and these people need it, so we're going to do it. Like that natural inclination towards impact. And I just love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I feel like what you said it's such a relevant core value to this time we're going through right now. I love seeing all those stories, like you mentioned, about what teams are doing to make an impact with like making masks. And something I really love, our first Indiana Robotics Student Board has started working with the First Canada Youth Council, and something they're doing is they're having Mental Health Mondays where they're releasing tips via social media platforms about things you can do to help take care of yourself during this stressful time. And I love seeing teams do things like that.
Yeah, I mean, in such unique times, like there's a lot of ways that people, and everybody has different skills. Like some people, their skill really is like sort of thinking about others and helping them through it, and finding a way to take their skills and project that into making things a little bit better for other people. It's just so amazing. I'm glad you're all doing that.
Yes, well, I think it just goes to show what a unique culture First is, and I'm just very grateful to be a part of this program.
Yeah.
I also kind of playing off this, I find it so cool that even though you didn't participate in First as a kid, you really have just dedicated yourself to making sure young people have this really incredible experience in this program. Your involvement actually reminds me of another interview I did recently with the person who actually founded my FLL team, Andy Maluzzi. I'm not sure if you know him. He's a first senior mentor right now. But he has this catchphrase that I love. And he says, First doesn't have an exit strategy, which I think has been very true for my family, at least. Do you think that's true for you? Do you see yourself being
absolutely
part of the program far into the future?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, yeah, no exit strategy is a really good way to put it, because I feel even in the 9 years that I've been around, like my involvement has changed, and I've sort of done new things, and I've met all these new amazing people. I can't imagine any reason why it would end. Like it's just been such an awesome experience. And there's people like, I love giving them, I think the competition, like the excitement of that, the experience, I love being able to like be part of that. Like in some sense, I feel like all of the energy, all of the excitement that everybody in the crowd has, like my job is just reflecting that onto them. But that means I get to be the focal point, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you definitely have, playing back into your core value, you've definitely had an impact on the students that you've worked with. But okay, this is something I've been excited to ask about. So volunteering has taken you all over the country, but also, all over the globe.
Yeah.
Into like Australia and places like that, I believe, right? So
yeah.
Can you maybe share some of your favorite experiences as you were traveling the world?
Ooh, I mean, I just love how, and I've tried to be part of this on the flip side, like how welcoming everybody is, especially all the wonderful people in First Australia. Like shout out to them. But like you sign up, I'm gonna go to this event. I maybe know 3 or 4 people, but that's okay. Like it's gonna be a good time. I swear every year at Silicon Valley Regional, there's at least one volunteer like on my couch in air mattresses. And like everybody kind of contributes and brings everybody together. and we're better together. So we all support each other. I have had a couple of the places that I've gone, I've had people show me around. When I went to Oklahoma, I actually got to see one of the mentors, like I stayed at his place. He works for a research lab, like studying weather. And I actually got to see this place, and it's like, oh yeah, this is where, when there's a like severe storm warning, like this is the room where it comes from. And like getting to see sort of a part of other people's lives and the cool stuff that they're doing, like that's been really cool too.
Definitely. Oh, that sounds like such a cool experience. I
Yeah.
love just getting to know all these people from all over the world. Like and because they share this same community and culture in the first world, so it's interesting to learn about their culture and their country. My FLL team traveled to England one year to compete, and it was one of my favorite memories is when we were in the cafeteria with a bunch of other teams, and this one coach from the Netherlands, he started doing the thing with the cups, you know, where you're like clapping and tapping and like flipping it around. And teams from like all different countries started joining in with that and then we were just finding like these links in culture. And it was just it was so cool to see that kind of thing.
I love that. And the impact that it brings back to them. One of the FTC teams who have since retired, but I got to know like when they were still a team, they went to the Asia Pacific Invitational. I believe it was after their first year doing FTC, and they'd been doing FLL. And they went from like, we're not sure like what we're doing, to just having this transformative experience being with other teams. And that event is so international from around the world. And like, just, I don't know, the community I think is such a big part of what the first experience is. And I love that.
Oh, definitely. Yes. I know. I could just talk about it forever, like just how much.
Oh, for sure.
But coming back to volunteering, what encouragement would you give to people interested to stepping up to volunteer at first events?
Ooh, I mean, I think the biggest one is there's always need. And if you're interested in something, like there's always room. You know, we need however many head referees, but we need about 5 to 6 times that many referees. And we need MCs and game announcers doing FRC, but there's lots of need in FLL and FTC qualifiers, and there's just naturally more of those. Like there's lots of pathways, there's lots of ways to grow, lots of ways to practice. And if you're not sure what you like doing, it's easy to go, well, I think I might like this, and try it out. And like everybody is so supportive of that. And like we're all kind of here for each other as a community, as we're learning and growing and like bettering everybody in the whole program.
Right. I like that. I'm very interested in volunteering at events next year once I graduate. So that's good to hear.
You should.
Yes, I'm excited to. So maybe playing a little bit off of that question, but in a different light, do you have, we obviously have a very large pool of engineers that we're speaking to right now. So do you have any advice for students who might have, you know, their eyes set for a career with Google?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the important things to actually underscore is Google isn't just engineers. Like very much like in first, it takes everybody. It takes people who are good writers to write all the documentation that all the developers read. It takes a village. And I think one of the unique things that I've seen a lot of people at Google, like everybody's very passionate. And maybe the thing they're passionate about is related to what they're working on. But also some of them it isn't. Like I've worked with people who are one who's very passionate about cycling, but like the passionate people who learn and grow and are always bettering themselves are very much a large part of the first community, but like they're also a very large part of the Google community. And yeah, it is hard, but like just go and be awesome. And maybe you'll end up at a place like Google. I had one coworker who she wanted her like dream job was she wanted to work at Google when she was done with college. She didn't quite make it, but she actually joined 5 years after she graduated. And that was the way it worked out. And she loved it. So I think like, keep trying, keep being awesome, and you'll have great experiences along the way whenever you happen to make it.
Definitely. Well, I know I can think of at least several names off the top of my head of people who are interested in that company and working with that culture. So I think we have a question from the Twitch chat. When traveling outside the US, what's your favorite food that you search for when abroad?
Ooh, I mean, so I think one thing is it depends where I'm going. But my favorite like thing to search for in food is not a particular dish or a particular cuisine, although I really like Thai food. It's getting like other countries' interpretations of different cuisines. I find that particularly fascinating. The Australian take on Chinese food is very, very good and apparently pretty authentic. But I've seen things like the Japanese take on French food, which is fascinating. And I love it. But like, yeah, seeing things through, and food, I love food, but seeing that through the lens of another culture, I think is fascinating. So that's what I look for.
Very cool. So another question from our Twitch chat. Now that you know more about FIRST, did you notice any similarities between the CARD programs and FRC or FTC, such as were there alliances or emphasis on core values, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I like the people who started CARD and who were organizing it, like Renee was one of them, but there were people from UW-Platteville. There were wonderful people from all over, and most of them were FRC alum. There were a lot of things that were very heavily influenced by FIRST. There were, I believe it was alliances of 3 in CARD, two teams with 3 robots is, I believe, the way that it worked.
2 teams per alliance with 2 robots.
Yes. It's been a while, but yeah, we had alliances. There were awards, like the structure looked very much like it could be another FIRST program. And I fully believe that was intentional.
Here is a photo I dug up of CARD. Don't worry, Nick, it gets better. Ta-da! This is a close-up. So you can see here that we built our little ground robot, and then we also have our flying robot that spent many times and many different things getting tested. We definitely snapped one of these arms off in one of the like actual flights on the field. So it was quite fascinating. We had Woody Flowers come by and he kind of like checked out the whole competition. But it was quite a bit of fun. Nick, I found a couple other fun photos as well. So this was a good photo from college. We were supposed to take a funny photo. So Nick, do you remember this lovely branding? It's real rough.
Yes.
So you know, you can kind of see like this is where we started off, and we had these beautiful robots, and you can kind of tell that our robot eventually improved. We kept working on it. It looks a lot better in that picture.
That robot, one of my favorite stories from CARD is that robot was kind of my typical freshman experience. After the robot came to Snap, I think it was Renee went, okay, who knows how to use machine tools? And I'm like, okay, I can do it. So I ended up getting to attach 2 aluminum crossbars and turn them into Swiss cheese in one of the teams who had the appropriate tools pit.
Yep. It was a good time there. All right. And then this was a funny photo that literally they were all running across this beautiful photo that it was me and Brian. And so I was the outgoing president and Brian was the incoming president. And then Nick's there. And Nick, were you the next president in line too? So it's actually 3.
Yeah.
So that's great. And then this is actually the full officer group. So for that next year after the transition. So.
Oh man.
All right. Those were the ones that I was able to find. Oh wait, and then I also had I recently went to visit And so Nick very generously posted this on Twitter for me because I was able to actually go and grab a tour. And so that was really awesome. I think we have a couple other comments. Why do you think CARD did not continue?
I mean, I wasn't close enough to it to say for sure. I think having a college program, just kind of the way First Vision for the progression of programs works, I think it was a little bit of an awkward thing. So that's kind of my inference, but I don't know. I'm speculating.
Sure, that's generically kind of what the response was, is that instead of focusing on a essentially like post 12 or 12 to 16 or that kind of age that time frame, being able to have those contacts volunteer and like continue to mentor and give back in those regards were all great opportunities, but there were also a large number of collegiate programs that were already in existence, and so people could go out and join their Formula SAE car and things like that. And so all of those pieces kind of contributed to that. And I would also say that, having flying robots with hard propellers may have resulted in some minor injuries. And that wasn't a great situation either. That we will neither confirm nor deny. Yep.
I have to be careful for all the lawsuits, right? I think we have one more question in the chat. Nick, what TED Talk or professional speaker would you recommend people watch that maybe haven't?
Ooh. I mean, I it's hard to say, like, it's really hard to pick one. Yeah, I don't know if I have a really good answer to that one. Yeah, no, I really don't. But I feel like Renee should give a TED Talk and you should listen to her. I feel like it would be a really good TED Talk.
He's already planning it, I bet.
You're not wrong, actually. I like it. So I think that yeah, so I think this has been really fun. Actually, ironically enough, one of our next speakers is also from Minnesota, and you know them very well. Aaron, if you were ready to unmute or like video, you could wave and say hello. This is a regular old Minnesota reunion here. No, absolutely. So for those that don't know, Erin was used to be in Minnesota. She was a student of a local FTC team. And Nick, when did you remember connecting with Fish in the Boat, which was Erin, your team back in the day?
Yeah, we were. It was at the Mall of America.
Yes, that was it.
Yeah.
I think that was like the second or third time we met Renee. I do remember the flying robots. That was my first year in St. Louis. And I'm like, wow, that's neat. This goes through college. And then it never showed up again.
It is really exciting to hear that people, saw it. And at least when we reference, oh yeah, we were those crazy people that put on this flying robot show. I mean, it was quite intense. Like, we got a whole field. We coordinated, I think it was more like 13 teams, 12 to 13 teams from across like the Midwest and all over to come to these events. It was, and all of us were like going to school, running our own team, also running these programs, also making up these random rules, building all this stuff. And like, we eventually met up at the Midwest Regional and said hello to everybody. Because previous to that, we were all working remotely, very much like we are now. So it was fascinating. So Nick, thank you so much for your time today. Is there anything else, like just from your first experience or from being a globe-trotting Googler Minnesotan that you'd like to just share before you head off?
Yeah, I mean, I think as parting words, like, the FIRST community is so big and like increasingly across the world. There's so many cool people I've met, especially from internationally, like so many First Lego League teams just around the world. And everybody has a story. Everybody's like supportive of each other. Like, go and meet people, go and help somebody out, go do something crazy. The sky's the limit and you can have an impact and have a blast at the same time.
Well, thank you so much, Nick. We really appreciate you coming to be on our conference. I also have to say thank you for representing our state with your t-shirt, your IRI t-shirt.
It felt appropriate.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, well, thank you so much. We really, really appreciate your time. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. So we have another absolutely awesome panel coming up here. But Chris, I know that you've been mentioning a few announcements and upcoming events that have been taking place. Did you want to call out any of the events that are coming up next week? They're kind of exciting.
Yeah, well, we've got a couple. Yeah, we've got the virtual showcase on Thursday. That'll be from 6:30 to 8 Eastern time right here on twitch.tv, First in Robotics. Then on Friday, we're going to be having a senior celebration. So that's a call out to teams, any teams, mentors, or students watching. We're needing pictures and names of all the seniors from the teams here in the state of Indiana. FRC and FTC would be fantastic. We definitely want to celebrate the successes and the joys of being in first for those seniors. And give them a chance to also let us know what their future plans are. So that'll be coming up in the next week. And I think that's, one last thing, I guess, is that I've mentioned each week as we've been talking is that the National Advocacy Conference is going virtual this year. So firstnac.org, you can register. They're doing 2 half-day Saturday sessions, Saturday, June 13th and Saturday, June 20th. And it's really a basic advocacy 101. But anybody can attend. It's really aimed for FRC and FTC participants, but registration is free since it's virtual this year. And then you can log in to watch and learn, and then bring those skills that you get here to the state of Indiana and start putting them into practice. So that'd be the couple things. And now on to our last session for the evening. Renee?
Excellent. All right. So we have a group of some fantastic young women who are doing some absolutely amazing work here. So ladies, if you could please showcase your videos, grab your audio. Awesome. Nice t-shirts. Good. Very cool. There we go. All right. And Devin, you're going to be our facilitator. I'll be off kind of to the side, just facilitating some of the Q&A via the chat. And so feel free to watch that for a few cues. And then Devin, do you want to kind of take it from there? Should I share the PowerPoint or do you want to?
It would be great if you could.
I will absolutely do that.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, first of all, I just want to say I am so excited to join you all today. I'm really looking forward to learning more about what inspired you to create Reinvented Magazine. I will add that I wholeheartedly share your desire to, break down barriers by joining the movement to get more girls involved in STEM. This is my senior year of high school, and I spent the year helping to form what is currently our only all-female FRC team in Indiana this year. And, we shared the same primary mission. And so I'm just really excited to hear about how you encourage young girls, not just through example, but also through your enthusiasm and passion for STEM. And I'm so impressed with all that you're doing. But Renee, I think it'd be great if we could take a moment and introduce our panel with the slideshow that you have.
Absolutely. And hopefully I might click, there we go. All right. So we have a number of fantastic young women who are on the show for us today. We have Kaylee. Can you say hello? Kaylee is the founder and editor-in-chief at Reinvented Magazine.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kaylee.
Awesome.
Okay.
No problem. Thank you so much. We also have Rachel Weeks, who is the CMO at Reinvented Magazine. Rachel, if you wanted to unmute, say hello so we can see your voice and your little icon, that'd be great.
Hey.
Brilliant. We have Erin Mitchell, who is the CFO at Reinvented Magazine.
Hey, everybody.
Wonderful. And then continuing on, we have Avika, who is the creative director at Reinvented Magazine.
Hello.
Hi. And then we have Aparna, and who is the executive writing director at Reinvented Magazine. And please feel free to correct me if I mispronounced your name. My apologies.
Oh, you're good.
Oh, thank you. Fantastic. Wonderful. All right. And with that, Devin, I'm going to turn this over to you. Thank you so much.
All right. So I understand that through this magazine, you want to, and I'll quote your website, reinvent the general perception of women in STEM fields. So can you maybe start off by explaining what you mean by that?
So I think one of the biggest issues nowadays is everyone thinks that they know exactly what a woman in STEM looks like. And I've heard it all, but from like train conductors, which I thought was a weird one, to hackers with the hoodies, and then more specifically or more commonly, girls with lab coats on and their hair tied back. And it's not typically a pretty picture. And so one of the biggest things that Reinvented Magazine aims to do is to reinvent that general perception of women in STEM fields. So as you can see, me, Erin, Rachel, Aparna, Avika, we're all women in STEM, and none of us look the same, and most of us are wearing pink. So there are so many different women out there, and we try to aim to showcase all of them so that the world can start to identify with all of these different women, as opposed to just thinking that a girl in STEM has to be in a lab coat wearing goggles with her hair back.
Awesome. Well, I love that you're really highlighting that inclusion aspect of this. I just feel like that's so important. So my next question is, was there a turning point where you went from just wishing there was this cool magazine targeted to women in STEM to thinking, hey, I could make this happen. Like, let's go for it. Was there that turning point? And can you maybe tell that story?
You guys want me to tell the founding story? So it started, I think, almost 2 years ago. However, the ball really didn't start, to get rolling until last May. But I got my last issue of 17 magazine in the mail, and I realized that I didn't read any of it anymore. I flipped straight to the back to the Trauma-Rama section and the horoscopes, and that was it. And so I now didn't have a magazine to read on my self-care days, when I was in the bubble bath or, putting on a face mask. And so I thought, wouldn't it be really cool if there was a magazine out there that highlighted women like me and told stories that I really cared about women like, Lamar Freed or Megan Smith. And so I, complained more than anything in the Emcee with National Center for Women in Information Technology Aspirations in Computing Facebook group. And that's really where the momentum started. As soon as I was like, this would be awesome, I can't believe this doesn't exist, people were like, well, let's do it, let's make it. And we quickly started to gain a lot of interest, and a Discord server was made before I even had any decision as to whether or not this magazine was getting made. And honestly, I'm so glad that it did, because I think that it's been a really amazing experience so far. Do you guys want to chime in a little bit on how you guys got on the Reinvented bandwagon?
Yeah, I can go for sure. So I joined the team relatively recently, actually. It's been less than a year. And I joined in by actually the Facebook groups. I saw posts reoccurring in all the Facebook groups. So it was like NC Wit, there's Lady Storm Hackathon, another hackathon group, I'm pretty sure. And kind of just seeing like the reactions that everyone had, like obviously liking the post and then loving the post. And I was like, this organization seems pretty interesting. And so I looked at their website and I saw that they were looking for volunteers, and what better way to get involved than to submit the volunteer form. And so from the Facebook post, I joined the team. Worked as much as I could. I really loved what they're doing, and so I hope to continue for as long as I can.
I got involved through NC Wit as well, and I would say similar to Kaylee, same kind of thing. If I grew up reading 17 magazine and Cosmopolitan, and they were in the checkout aisles of Target, but I when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up, there wasn't anybody who I could look at and be like, I want to be that person in 5 years, or I want to be that person when I graduate from college, right? And so getting involved with the magazine really helped provide me kind of an outlet. Volunteering and giving back to the community has always been something that's been near and dear to my heart. And so with Reinvented, I'm able to influence that little girl who needs a spark to say, hey, I want to be that person. And so that's why I'm on the team, is to be able to provide that.
For me, so Kaylee and I actually went to college together. We were both studying aerospace engineering at Embry-Riddle. And when Reinvented magazine started to pick up, I kept seeing on her Facebook feed everything that they were doing. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. I want to get involved with that. Just because Embry-Riddle is a school that is mostly male populated. It was 18% female when we first started, I believe. And then by the time we graduated, it was like 25%. So I think Kaylee and I both understand what it's like to be the only girl in our classes most times. And we realized I realized that I agreed with her mission and everything, and that was something that had to change in our school and overall with like women in STEM.
I joined the Reinvented team pretty early on, actually. I ended up seeing like one of the original posts on the NC Facebook that Kaylee had mentioned. And at the time, I had been leading an all-girls FTC team, and we were encountering so many young girls who really didn't have any leaders to look up to in STEM fields. So I really, really like the idea of working for a magazine who, would highlight really, really cool women in STEM. So I think I submitted a form asking how I could get involved, and I've been involved in the team since.
Awesome. So, okay. So I love hearing all those stories about how you got involved. I'm going to ask a follow-up question in a minute, but first I want to ask, in an age where more and more magazines are turning to a digital-only format, why is it important to you to still provide printed copies for each of your issues?
So I guess for me, it's that accessibility piece, right? So I met Renee a bunch of years ago as we were involved in First Robotics, right? And so I've continued that work and that volunteer work even through now. And when I was in college, I volunteered with a team through a nonprofit called Youth and Shelter Services. And so those were kind of the kids who didn't really have a place to go after school, didn't really have a home to go home to. And I realized that they had very different access to things than I did when I was growing up, right? And so they didn't have internet at home, and they didn't have reliable internet at school, and they didn't have access to things that I considered like, part of my day-to-day life. And so if I had sent them home with First Link or something to do more research for their project, it wasn't going to get done because they just didn't have access. And so that ties into the print magazine piece of it, is if I wanted to send one of those girls a link to a magazine or an article, or like hey, you look like you'd be interested in software engineering, here's more information, they wouldn't be able to use that. And so providing a tangible physical thing that these girls or any girl can take home with them and say, hey, go read this, I think it might inspire you, is pretty, primarily the reason we decided to go primarily print with our magazines, is to provide that accessibility.
Yes. I really like that, making sure you're including a larger community. I think that's really valuable. Kaylee, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, so accessibility, like Erin said, is a really big part of our mission. Something that, or I think the part of Reinvented that is closest to my heart is our 1-for-1 program. And so for every one magazine that a customer buys, one magazine gets donated to girls in areas that don't have this access to STEM education resources, internet, laptops, any of that kind of thing, where, like we said, a digital magazine or a digital copy wouldn't really help them all that much. They just wouldn't be able to read it. And so our one-for-one program allows us to partner with organizations who reach out to girls in these areas like Maker Girl, Launch STEM Careers, Girls for Science, HTML, are some of the few to name. They help us reach out to girls in those areas so that we can get to them magazines and provide them with the role models that we think or we know they need in order to pursue careers in STEM.
Absolutely. Well, I think having those role models is just so important. I mean, Renee told me about a quote, you can't see what you can't be. So I think that's really important to just be promoting these role models. But Rachel, did you have something you wanted to add as well?
Yeah, I was just going to add that, like, obviously I'm a woman in STEM and I love technology, but I am one of those people that I'm always looking at a computer screen all day, every day, and I get tired of it eventually. So I love whenever I can get something that's paper in my hands to read, I will do it. Like, I love to read books. So if I can choose between a digital magazine and a print magazine, I will choose the print magazine just to rest my eyes a little bit. So I think that's also something else that is also good, that we have the print for those people that like that option as opposed to the digital.
I can definitely agree with that one. I have over here, I have like a wall of bookshelves because I prefer the print copies also. But kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, I know you talked about how you each individually got involved with your team. But I noticed you have almost 50 people involved with creating this magazine. So what's kind of your strategy to get other people involved? Like how do you get in more volunteers and employees to help with your articles?
I think one of the things that we really try to hit hard is our social media pages. And also we do a lot of networking throughout the team, is getting our team members to reach out to their friends and anyone that they can kind of get their hands on. We've also started reaching out to people through LinkedIn. And honestly, like, if there's anyone that's interested in our magazine, well, we've had a lot of people reach out to us as well and just saying, I love this idea. How can we get involved? And we're telling them we always are willing, like, we don't care what your background is, if you're a woman in STEM or if you're not a woman in STEM, if you don't know anything about it, like, we're willing to have anyone on our team that is willing to promote our cause. So.
Yeah, I can definitely go. So I think the biggest part about Reinvented is you don't necessarily have to come in with a skill set. And it's like a community and people who all want to like work towards a common goal. And so as a creative team, like a creative director, I make sure that everyone who does join the creative team, they don't necessarily have to have like creative talent or any specific talent in graphic design. And that's because there's multiple subsets that we can use. Everyone has friends. And I think that when you have a community, you're willing to learn different things. And so I guess, I don't know, like the marketing is just really like our happiness and just like how we reach out to people, how we connect to people.
Awesome. Well, I love that you're really promoting this large network of strong female role models, and you're really providing a platform to showcase all the great work that they're doing. Can you maybe tell us more about your team and how your diverse backgrounds help strengthen your Reinvented family?
Sure. So on the writing team specifically, we have so many staff writers of so many different backgrounds. And what we see a lot of times is they're able to apply, their prior experiences and talk about their own lives in some of our writing. So whether that's in a post for a blog, or if they're able to pull some of that and put it on their articles, they're able to share a lot of their experiences with our readers. And we think that's really, really important so that our readers can really, connect with the message that we're sharing and like sort of see themselves and find some role models who look like themselves or who have similar backgrounds.
I think on the like Aparna said, on the finance team, which I run specifically, and I really want to appreciate what Avika said about you don't have to come in with like the talent or the skill set, we'll teach it to you. The finance team is a pretty diverse group. We've got a couple of college students and then high school students and me who are just interested in learning more, right? And so one of my team members wants to open her own like pediatric facility when she graduates. And so she joined the finance team to learn a little bit more about running a small business and what that looks like. I have another team member who joined because she was interested in grant writing. And so there's a lot of different facets to finance that, as a woman in STEM, you know, I'm very much in my industrial engineering role at work. And so being part of Reinvented and being CFO and having the finance team allows me to kind of explore those interests and learn more about what goes into a proposal or what goes into a bid for things. So it really not only provides very diverse experiences for my team, but it also just helps me while I'm at work every day.
Yeah, and for the marketing team, like a lot of us actually don't have that much marketing experience. Like I, for one, I did a little bit of marketing when I was in college for some of the student organizations I was in. My co-CMO, Daniela, I think she took a class in social media trends. We just recruited a girl that she had a marketing internship, so she has a little bit more experience with marketing than some of us. And then a couple of their teammates are just in high school and they haven't really experienced as much. But yet they're really good at making social media graphics. So it's kind of it's an array of different kinds of people with different kind of skill sets. So we all kind of come together and we're like, how do we promote this event the best we can, you know, with what we have, with our experience and everything. So I think that's kind of the best thing, is that everyone kind of has bits and pieces and we can come together and use all those skills to be successful.
So for the creative department, I personally am also a senior in high school. And so, but our team is so diverse. We have freshmen in high school all the way to people who are working for their PhD currently. And so like, even just from seeing that, you can tell that there's going to be different opinions and there's going to be different ideas. So like, for example, the sticker pack, right? High schoolers are all about those hydro flasks. So we have people who have ideas for those. And then we also have people who have like formally actually worked in graphic design and done like media studies. So like we have people who can create designs for t-shirts that are able to connect to the largest audience. And so like having a diverse team like that, it can be hard sometimes, but it's also what makes it like super strong as well.
Yeah, so I guess I don't technically have a team or a department, since I kind of own all of the departments. But I think on the team side, it's really awesome to see. I mean, one, how many people apply every week? I think every night or so, I'm telling the team like, hey, so you got a new applicant, and it's awesome to see where they're all from geographically. I think that we now have 3 international people on our team from Canada, the UK, and we just got one from India, which was awesome. And we also have a varying of age ranges. Like they said, I think our youngest is 14 or 15, all the way up to, we have like those who are moms, both dog and of children. And so it's so cool. And then we also have this huge range of majors. So, you know, we have a few aerospace engineers, we have a few computer scientists, industrial engineers, you know, people who, you know, are professionals in the creative world. And I think we just brought on a whole bunch of biomedical people who always blow my mind away, because that's the one thing that I've never understood my whole life is biology. So it's really awesome to see our team as a whole, you know, and how diverse we are in terms of just about everything, age, major, where we're from. And it's so great to hear all of their ideas when we all come together in our Thursday all hands and, you know, within our department meetings, because everyone has a different voice to bring to the table.
I love hearing about that, how you have, I didn't realize you had such a diverse age group until very recently. So I like that you're pulling in like the high schoolers. I think that's a really, really cool point of view to bring. And that's also really cool to hear about all the international members.
Hey Devin, real quick. So I recently came on at first as interim COO as a volunteer for the organization, but I felt like I couldn't let my ops team down and like not mention, you know, some of the work that they do. And so from an ops team point of view, I'm still kind of learning all these different pieces, but some of the big things that we've been working on is onboarding, being able to focus on like specific recruiting, event management and planning, along with working on a virtual conference and award related pieces. And so those are some of the aspects that we've started working on in that regard as well. And so I thought it would be helpful to make sure that anyone who's interested in volunteering, you know, find us on Facebook and then join the ops team or any other team, but
Yes,
definitely the
please.
ops
The
team.
finance team is the best team.
All right.
All right, well then moving on to our next question. Were there ever moments when you thought your dream was not going to be realized? And if so, what helped you to push past those moments?
Oh, yeah. I think the biggest one for me was when we first launched our Women You Should Fund campaign, which is kind of like a GoFundMe, except it's run by this amazing group of women who form an organization called Women You Should Know. And if you have never heard of them, you should definitely go check them out on Facebook. They are awesome. And it's pretty much like a GoFundMe site, but exclusively for female founders. And so we posted on there, and we were trying to raise like our first round of money to print issue 1. And we're like, 2 weeks before our deadline, and we're like, not even close, like maybe a quarter of the way there. And I'm going back to my team, and I'm talking to like my COO at the time, and I'm like, I have no clue. Like, this just seems like it's going to be a total bust. Like, I don't know what we did wrong, man, this sucks. And then it was like overnight, people, found Reinvented somehow. I think a Women You Should Know actually like posted about us, and they have 1 billion followers. And all of a sudden everyone was like, oh my God, why had I never heard of this before? Like, yes, I need this. The world needs this. And I mean, 1, it was great because we got our whole thing funded, and here we are today about to print issue 4. But 2, it was a really good reminder for me to see that the world really does share this passion and this vision and this need for a magazine like this, and that they understand that role models need to be brought into the spotlight so girls can grow up to be the future scientists, engineers, mathematicians. So yeah, I think that was my biggest setback so far, but it's definitely had its ups and downs, that is for sure. Some days are crazier than others, but every time an issue comes out, it reminds me why we're doing this. And every time we donate a magazine, it reminds me why we're doing this.
I guess to expand on that a little bit, and pull it way back, right? I know we had touched on not having role models before. And so just on the realizing your dream or trying to decide if your dream was ever going to come to fruition, I always was good at kind of problem solving things, but I honestly didn't think engineering was ever an option because there wasn't anybody who looked like me. And so that's why I'm really, really content to be part of this organization. But on top of that, what we're doing matters because, so Discovery is another organization I work with, and they recently released a report that was not why do women leave STEM fields, but why do women stay in STEM fields? And there were 7 reasons why women stayed primarily in STEM fields. The first one was having role models. The second one was self-efficacy. Do you feel like you belong in that field? And so those 2 really stood out to me as to why what we're doing matters, because I think I would have been much more apt to choose engineering as a field had I known, like, there are role models I can look up to. I belong in this position. And so there are really honestly moments in the magazine where I'm like, I am trying to figure this out. I don't know what I'm doing. I am an industrial engineer by day, and I don't know anything about taxes, but we're gonna learn. And so struggling through those moments and trying to figure out, like, can we actually do this? It's definitely a challenge, but something that I, wake up every day. I'm like, all right, we're gonna tackle something new. And I think it's because we've gotten over those hurdles so much is why I know we'll be successful in the future.
Yeah, just to kind of like play off of Erin, like, since I don't have a background in marketing and I'm one of the marketing officers, I'm always Googling things about marketing strategies, how to promote an event. I even like considered buying a book in marketing because I was like, maybe a book and strategies would be cool to have. But like, that has been, it's been a challenge for me, of course, but I'm learning a lot about like how to market to people and advertise, and I've had to go to newspapers and the media and just, you know, just cold email them and say, hey, let's set up a meeting, let's talk about this. And I have gone to meetings, and I feel like it's really helped me develop as a person, just because now I can go up and talk to anyone and just be like, hey, let's talk about this. Let's see what happens. So I feel like that has been, this has been like a huge growing opportunity for me as well.
Awesome. Well, I love to hear that mindset, you know, where maybe we don't know how to do it right now, but we're going to figure it out. So then moving on to our next question. What do you and your staff writers and your leadership team look for when you are seeking your next great story to write about?
That's a great question. So, you know, we always have to keep our audience in mind. We're basically trying to find really, really strong leaders and ambassadors in STEM for girls to be able to identify with. So we're always reaching out to, you know, people who have been doing really groundbreaking things in STEM, or people who we feel like our audience can, again, sort of identify with. So whether that's, you know, two girls who are making like really cool pancake robots in Norway, or even like the former CTO of the United States. We're just trying to find really unique stories for our staff writers to write about in our articles.
It kind of bouncing off what Aparna said about like those really strong women doing really cool stuff. In our issue 2, we featured this woman as part of our Everyday Changemaker series. And I think I had said this earlier about women that you could look at and say, I want to be that person when I graduate from college, or I want to be that person 8 to 10 years down my career. And so Christy Thompson is a food engineer for General Mills, and she's like my favorite person. Yeah. And so she and I interviewed her to talk about, you know, kind of her career path, what she studied in college, the different roles she had at General Mills that got her into food engineering. And so she told me this really cool backstory about how she didn't think she was going to study engineering, and she didn't know what she wanted to do. And so we started, you know, got through that whole thing, and then made it to like, what would you be if you weren't an engineer? And so she was talking about how she would be a large animal veterinarian because she helps run this nonprofit for care of elephants. And she took like a sabbatical from work to go to Zambia for 3 months. And if that didn't work out, she was also like a semi-pro boxer for a while. And I'm like, you're the coolest person I've ever met. And so being able to highlight these women who are doing really cool stuff in STEM, but are also like semi-pro boxers on the side, I think is really important to highlight just those well-rounded people who are very, very strong role models, but also do really cool stuff.
That is absolutely amazing. I need to read that article. Like, that is so cool. I mean, okay, elephants are my all-time favorite animal. You can ask anybody who knows me. I'm relatively obsessed. So I'm very excited to read that. But did anybody else have anything to add on, or should we move on to our next question? Okay, go for it, Rachel.
Okay. So I'm going to share a little secret with our viewers tonight. So for issue 4, I got to write the feature article. So I'm kind of jumping ship from marketing to writing for this issue. But our feature is going to be Alyssa Carson. So if you guys haven't heard of her, she is a 19-year-old that is training to be the first astronaut to go to Mars. So the thing that I think is so special about her is that she's only 19 years old, but her resume is huge, like pages on pages. So it's just amazing. And like what she's done, it shows that your age doesn't limit you in what you can do. So I think that's something that our readers have to realize, is that if you're 15 or if you're 28, you can still do whatever you want to do. So
Is this the same Alyssa that was like on the Super Bowl commercial and is the
Yes.
newest Nike ambassador? Oh,
Yeah, she was in the SodaStream commercial, and she's also now a Nike ambassador for like their yoga line. Look her up; she's awesome. She was also in a Netflix documentary, I think, about being like the Mars generation or something, and showed her doing her training and stuff like that. So definitely Google her because she's awesome, and she was so down to earth when I got to interview her. She is studying astrobiology right now at Florida Tech. So she's focusing on her school right now, but she's really focused on training and becoming an astronaut, and she's super awesome. So look into her.
is that episode 4 then?
Oh, issue 4?
Yes, issue
Yeah,
4.
yeah. Issue
Episode Sorry, I was like, Netflix.
Yeah.
No, that's so exciting. So actually, I have all my reinvented magazines over here. But I actually got super interested because I realized that Megan Smith was on one of the first one that you had published, and that was really important because I had actually just seen her. Woody Flowers was her mentor, and she was at his celebration of life ceremony, and I like saw her on the cover and was like, oh my gosh, that's so familiar. And I read that she went to MIT, and I like looked it up, and I was like, oh my God, I love this organization. Like the fact that they highlighted her, that she was the former CTO of the United States, like, and so that's kind of one of the reasons I also started like getting involved, besides knowing Aaron, talking to people about events, and then calling in some favors from my favorite t-shirt person for the for the Lego event that was in Florida.
All right.
I think if it's okay, I have one last thing. And I think it's so important that everyone knows that like everyone has a story to be told. So when you ask, how do we pick a good feature? That's so hard because everyone, has a story. Everyone has a great story, especially women in STEM. We all have, and I've learned this over the last 4 issues, we all have some kind of crazy story to be written. And so, sharing those stories is such a huge part, whether you're 15 or, worked under Obama, it doesn't matter. Your story still, matters all the same.
Absolutely. I love that you said that. I think it's just, you're right. Everybody does have this really unique story, and when you share them in a magazine like this, you're giving younger girls somebody to look up to, and I think it's the coolest thing. But kind of shifting gears a little bit, one thing I've always loved contributing to the various first teams that I've been on has always been helping with our team branding. And I have to say, I absolutely adore the branding for your magazine because it seems, like you're not trying to strip away anything too feminine or girly. Was that a conscious effort to show, we can still wear pink and dresses and ribbons and bows and light glitter and still be successful and brilliant and rival any of our male colleagues?
Yes, that was definitely intentional. And I think that's a big part because our branding colors are light and dark pink and then light and dark blue. And they shouldn't necessarily be separated into a girl color and a boy color because those colors, if you look at our magazines, they're all interweaved together and everything we make kind of has like those colors intermixed. And so the idea is being feminine and being bold. Like we use strong shapes and strong designing. Like if you see our website, it's very like square and you can tell what you're looking at. And it's like almost like an industrial thing, right? If you look at industrial designs. And so it's definitely very, very intentional for how we do our branding. And it's like we're working on a sticker pack right now too. And the theme that we're going around is females in various aspects of not only engineering, but like STEM and leadership as a whole. And so like our sticker pack females, a girl coder or a girl boss or a girl engineer or a girl scientist. It's like everyone has these roles and you shouldn't be defined definitely not by like the colors you wear or by what gender you are. It's like by the drive you have and the passion.
Also, really quickly wanted to add, we had like a whole fashion feature section in our print issue of the magazine. So we had someone come in and talk about how, appropriate footwear for like the workforce, especially when you're in like engineering. And Kaylee's holding up the magazine now, so like steel-toed boots and how to make them like classy and fashionable for the workplace.
That is amazing. I love that you're really making that a priority. And that article sounds amazing also, absolutely hilarious. But then kind of going back to writing, the writing portion, if you could interview anyone, living or deceased, for your next issue, who do you think it would be and why?
That is such a great question. So I am a really big fan of, I was gonna say like Elizabeth I, because I think that if she could have been an engineer, I think she definitely would have been, because she is 100% a problem solver. And so I think that she would kind of be top of my list just in terms of like role models. But then, more so from, I think, like the engineering side, I really, and like the STEM side, Chloe Condon is a fantastic contact. So she started with a theater major and then transitioned and did a boot camp and did a bunch and like learned how to code. And now she works for Microsoft. And so like she is just, someone that I think she would be fantastic to potentially interview at some point. So Erin, do you want to fill in the next, like someone that you would recommend as well for a future episode?
I mean, if we could do living or dead, I'd pick Marie Curie. She's very dead, but if I could pick anybody, she's kind of the person who, if I had to come up with somebody who was kind of that first, like, oh, girls could be scientists, I think it was Marie Curie, who I read about in like a textbook in like 5th grade or something. And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I could do that, because everybody else I'd ever heard of who'd been a scientist or an engineer in my science class in 4th grade had been like a white male.
For me, it would definitely be Hedy Lamarr. I don't know if anyone knows who that is, but she was an actress who was also an inventor. And I just finished an audiobook called The Only Woman in the Room, and it was about her life and how since she was like gorgeous and an actress, no one took her seriously as an inventor, and it was like heartbreaking to listen to, and about the stuff that happened back then and the discrimination against women. So I would love to interview her because she just faced so much, and she knew firsthand about what that felt like. And she created frequency hopping, which helped us in, I think it was WW2, and also is used in like our GPS systems nowadays. So she's just someone that I would love to talk to.
Absolutely. I just wrote down the name of that audiobook because I want to listen to it. But does anyone else want to share maybe?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this a lot, like since you asked, and this is a tough question. And I think it was really interesting because my first reaction was, oh, Megan Smith. And then I was like, we interviewed her. And that's kind of how a lot of our stories have come to where they are. And it's been like, oh my God, like Megan Smith would be so cool to sit down with and talk to. And then all of a sudden a friend of a friend was like, oh, like I can make that happen for you. And we've done, a whole bunch of that. We've had Lamar Freed. Our latest one was Dr. Jen Golbeck, who is more famously known for her dogs, which are very, very cute. And I, watch their Snapchats every day. But, she's like this unsung hero who is really kicking butt in computer science. But I think that if I had to pick someone next, it would either be like Michelle Obama, who isn't necessarily STEM related, but is super empowering for women to just do whatever they want to do, which is a lot of very aligned with what Reinvent is about. Or like Bindi Irwin, who is like super awesome, so like seemingly so down to earth, and like people wouldn't really consider her your stereotypical STEMinist, even though like she works with animals and a lot of what she does is related to STEM. So those would be my next ones. Can't promise they'll be on covers one day, but it would be a dream of mine.
Awesome. Well, I think it would be very, very cool to hear from some of those people. I would definitely also, Erin, say Marie Curie. Like that sounds really, really cool. I remember reading about her in history shortly after I got involved with First Lego League, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe this is something I can do. But so, since you all, of course, did not have a magazine like Reinvented to inspire you as you were looking to get involved with STEM, can you maybe share like who were your cheerleaders that made you feel like you could bust your way into a career that's still largely dominated by men, and kind of how did you get involved with STEM?
I can go. So my story for STEM is kind of actually really funny. So I had a teacher in middle school that had pictures of female scientists on her wall. And like every class I went to, and then I moved in high school, and the same picture of the same scientist was on the next wall. And so like I asked my teacher which scientist this was, and it turned out to be Ada Lovelace, which she was a like I think 18th century programmer, and her programs were written on paper. So it's not technically computer science, but you could regard it as like intellectual thinking, something like that. And so the concept of algorithms is kind of vague if you've never done computer science before. And so I just Googled it. There was always YouTube videos, and I kind of just got into like making algorithms and like cookie baking and like those broad connections that all the YouTube videos make. And then from those cookie baking algorithms, I went into actual computer science. And now that is what I hope to also do in my life.
Personally, I actually first got into STEM through FIRST. There was a local FRC team who was hosting like a robotics camp over the summer. So when I was in like second grade, I went and joined that, and we built like little robots that like fought each other and pushed it off like a little ramp or something like that. And I was hooked after that. So I've been doing FIRST robotics ever since. And in terms of like cheerleaders and people who really like push me on, definitely my First Tech Challenge team and our sponsors and things have been super duper supportive of my journey through STEM. It's been really nice.
So I feel like most of my team probably already answer, but my mom is like one of the, I think she is the biggest reason for why I am who I am today. And I got so lucky. So my mom was, and I'm gonna botch this because sometimes I say she's a marine engineer and sometimes I say she was a naval engineer, and then either way I'm always wrong somehow. But she worked on those large aircraft carriers for the Navy. So she was an engineer, and I grew up thinking like, oh, I'm gonna be a designer, I'm going to be a teacher. And if you saw my sense of style way back when, I was not meant to be a fashion designer. And my mom knew that. And so when Girl Scouts started their first robotics, their first robotics program, she kind of dragged me to a session about, to learn about what it was and, to maybe get on a team, pretty much by my ear, and was like, all right, you're going to come to this and you're going to watch this and you're going to tell me whether or not you like it. And by the end of the session, I was head over heels in love with robots. And I was like, yes, Mom, you're totally right. I want to do this. And ever since then, every time like I've hit a roadblock, every time, a boy's been mean to me, or, someone said I don't belong in STEM, my mom's always been the one that's been there, ready with a cup of tea and some tissues to tell me everything's going to be okay. And so I'll give her like a shout out a little bit. In every magazine, I write PS, hi mom. And in the last one, I had Avika hide it because my mom was finding it way too easily. And she actually just found it in issue 3 like yesterday. So I can like show everyone where it is now. But it's on the cake page, which I thought was very fitting for me. And one thing that Avika kind of said after this issue was that I think, that PS Hi Mom, it's not just for your mom anymore. It's for all of, the moms out there who are trying to get their girls into STEM. And I think that that's so important because, even if your mom doesn't go into STEM, that doesn't mean you can't be the role model for your daughter who is thinking about going into STEM like mine was. So, yeah.
That's such an amazing story, Kaylee. I love that so much. But
So,
Rachel, you want to add?
yeah. So it's funny that Kaylee's talking about her mom and being an engineer, because my mom's also my role model, but she knows nothing about engineering. So she's a fifth grade teacher, and she's always been a teacher for elementary school students. So when I got to the 7th grade and I started taking, I think it was Algebra 1, my mom was like, this is the point where I cannot help you anymore. Like, you are on your own because I don't know how to do this stuff. So this has always been a journey for me to kind of like go by myself. Like, she hasn't really been holding my hand. I mean, she's been helping me emotionally, but in terms of knowledge, she doesn't really know much about STEM. So I've always had to explain things to her. And whenever I talk about my job, I'm like, this is how it works. And she's like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but that sounds awesome. So she's kind of just been there supporting me, like whenever I'm having a bad day or like whenever I'm crying or something, she's always there to support me. And I think that's good. Like, even though she doesn't have a STEM background, she's still there to be my cheerleader and everything. And she's like, wow, you do some really cool stuff. And, you know, I wish I had those kind of opportunities when I was a kid, because she was growing up in the 60s and everything, and they didn't have those kind of opportunities. So I feel like she's kind of living her second life through me and everything. But she's definitely my role model for sure.
That's so great to hear. I love that. I would say the same personally. My mom is absolutely incredible, and she was actually my FLL coach for 5 years. So, but anyway, moving on to our next question. This is actually one from Twitch that I'll bring up real quick. How should we go about encouraging more female participation in FIRST? And are there any tips that you might advise that teams do in order to grow female participation?
So, okay, I have 2 things. First one, find a female technical mentor. I will push this over and over again. Role models. Find somebody who looks like them and don't treat them any differently. Because if you have a female technical mentor who walks in and says, hey, I'm going to teach you how to use a drill press, nobody's going to bat an eye because they have the same technical knowledge as everybody else there. That's point number 1. And I think, you know, that's really important to me as a FIRST mentor, right? Like, I love the chairman's award, I love the business plan, and I love all of the non-technical things and the awards and the outreach that go into FIRST. But I also am very well aware of the fact that I have a role to play as a technical mentor, as a female engineer, because I usually wear heels to robot practices because that's what I wear to work. And I know that I, you know, don't look like the image of what an engineer looks like today. And so I'm kind of cementing my place as a leader on that team, being able to teach people about everything. So that's number 1. Number 2 is make the girls feel comfortable in that space. And I think the best way to do that is the technical mentor. I think best way number 2 to do that is make sure the girls get involved. You know, don't blatantly say, hey, you know, why aren't you doing this? If you're teaching a session as a mentor, or your students are doing like a camp or something, or you're doing like the shop training and anybody who's interested should sign up for shop training, make everybody do it, right? So like, if you're sending 4 people in at a time to go get trained on a drill press, send everybody in to go get trained on a drill press. Don't exclusively send the people who are on the mechanical team. The other thing that I've done in the past is I've had a girls' day in the shop, and that's inclusive of anybody who presents as a girl or would like to be a girl, right? That's not exclusionary at all. And I've found, I did this back in Iowa with a group, and it was, we found like a female carpenter and a female welder and a female machinist, and brought them in, had the girls train on how to use a CNC, how to use a drill press, how to build a table, right? So getting those girls some exposure to people in fields they might be interested in, as well as teaching them those technical skills.
Yeah, if I could really quickly add on, I think the whole idea of like having the students identify like a role model is really, really important. Outreach is a huge aspect of what FIRST teams do. And so if you're able to reach out to female engineers and just have them sit down and talk to ambassadors, female ambassadors in STEM, that can have a huge impact on especially like younger girls who are joining or considering joining FIRST. Because it can really show them that there is a place for them on these teams and there is a place for them in STEM fields.
I think Renee wants to chime in here. I can see what she's holding.
Okay, so anytime this comes up, like I bring this up because I didn't realize this until literally like this year in February. So this is what the drill system that my husband's bought into. And you can kind of see that when I hold this, one, it's heavy, but two, like I can't, it's like really hard to like hold, like I don't have a good grip on it. And so this is my tiny Renee's DeWalt drill. And so this is the drill that I have. And you can see that my grip here is much easier to actually hold it. And so it feels a lot more secure. And I was in this situation where I was running around like at work, setting up my workspace and drilling things in. And I was using my tiny drill and I couldn't. And I came home and I was like, Danny, like we have to set things up for the Super Bowl. Like I need you to set things up. And he was like, not doing it. And so I was like, why don't I like drilling things when I'm at home? And it was because I didn't have my tiny little light drill where I could just zip around and do this. And so then I got really angry and I started trying to figure out like if people had small hands, like how do you make sure that they can access the proper technologies? And I did research into ergonomics and I got my hand 3D printed. And so I've been like doing research into this because ultimately the actual question is like, what drill system like are you utilizing that is most comfortable for you from an ergonomic standpoint? And like from that regard, it just sat there and like I bring a little drill kit now to every meeting and I'm like, anyone with small hands or large hands can use it. It doesn't matter. And then I also maybe played with like finger paint with my students on my robotics team. And like anyone who said that Renee, like the gold drill was the one that was lighter, got a gold handprint, and anyone that said that the red drill was the better option for them got a green print. And then I've like gone through and I've started measuring them to determine their like hand sizes so that we can start figuring out different options for like drills. Anyway, that was a very long answer to say make sure that the tools that you have can fit people with small hands, because young men, when they are involved in this program, or young anybody, they could have small hands. They might not have enough weight to leverage the tools properly, and they need to be taught the proper ergonomic structure for that. Thank you for coming to part of my one TED Talk. I have many more.
Absolutely. Oh, I remember I got the opportunity to hold Renee's drill at our one competition that we managed to actually have this year, and it was definitely mind-blowing, and I want one too. So, but moving on to our next question. For those of you who maybe have experienced discrimination as a woman pursuing a STEM field, was it greater when you were in school or after you started your career? And can you maybe share just kind of how you handle that kind of situation?
Yeah, so I think it's been fairly consistent across my time as an engineering student and as a early career. I think that college, it seemed a little bit more apparent. I think the discrimination was a little bit less passive. It was very obvious that I was the only girl in the room, and I was always told by my project team members like, oh, you just put the presentation together, you just make it look pretty, as if like I really had no clue what I was doing. But that wasn't the case. I knew that I was smart and that I can probably do all their calculations a million times faster and better than them. Cough cough. But I don't think that changed once I got into my career. It just became a little bit, more passive, where, you know, I was still the only girl in the room, but the discrimination wasn't, you know, so much of the, you know, go do this instead. And it wasn't, you know, as, you know, dominant on, no, you like don't know what you're doing. But it became really clear that a lot of my male coworkers, especially my, you know, older male coworkers, didn't really agree with anything that I said and would always try and brush off anytime I had analysis that proved them wrong. And it made my job super hard to do, and it still does. As a mission analyst at Harris, my job is to kind of tell people when the system is broken and why the system is broken and why their designs don't work. So when, you know, a 23-year-old 5'2" female comes in to a room filled with, you know, 40 to 50-year-old white males who have been in this industry for a long time and says, nope, sorry, that thing's not flying in space, you know, they get a little bit angry. And so I think I've learned how to combat that, and I found a really amazing mentor who is also a, you know, older white male, but he always has my back. And that was so important, was, you know, the fact that anytime, you know, I was in a conference room and I was presenting my material, he always had my back. Whenever someone questioned me, he said, no, trust me, her numbers are sound and Kaylee's going to tell you exactly why. And so finding those advocates for you within your company, and, you know, while you're going through school, reaching out to Encee, you know, they were another huge one for me every time I faced these kinds of issues. My mom there with the virtual cup of tea every time something like this happened. So yeah, it's definitely there, and I'm not sure that it's going away anytime soon, but I'm hoping that the more women that get into these fields, and hopefully this magazine helps that, the less we'll start to see this kind of thing until it goes away.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's really important to have those advocates, like you said, who are just there to empower. And yes, hopefully it is getting better. And I think your magazine is definitely giving people those role models that they need. But just to kind of wrap up, do any of you want to share your favorite reinvented article and maybe what you found most inspiring about it?
Yeah, so my favorite article is from issue 2, and it is on Merritt Moore. So if you haven't looked into her, she's a quantum physicist, but she is also a professional ballerina. So what I think is so inspiring about her is that she's able to pursue her career in STEM, but also pursue her career as in ballet. And I feel like that's something that girls don't realize, is that it's not a choice of one or the other. You can have passions in both STEM and something that's more creative and artsy and stuff. Like I like STEM, but I also like to sing and I like to do choir and stuff. So I think that's something we always have to remind them, is that you don't have to choose between being a scientist doing STEM and then being a little bit more feminine and stuff. You can definitely do both. And I think Merritt Moore definitely shows that she's a living example of that.
That is so cool. I'm a dancer, and I've heard of her in the ballet world. So I didn't know that she also had this like whole STEM side of her career. So I'm definitely going to go research this after. But cool. Does anybody else maybe want to share their favorite article?
I can go. So the thing with the creative team is we get all the articles once they're written and the images, and we put them into the magazine layout that we end up printing. And so we kind of get all the information like a month before everybody else sees it. And it's like we're kind of sneaky and we start reading them before as well, because I mean, it's right there. Why not? They're kind of inspiring. But I really love movies. And so one that really caught me for issue 3 was the science behind Star Wars. And it had like all how the graphic design works, like the green screens in the back, how they have like the characters, how they move, and like explaining how all that worked in like 6 or 7 pages. So super in depth. And that's like stuff you don't normally see except for in our magazines. And of course, there's amazing like female engineers and like computer scientists making those visuals and those graphic designs. And it just like, it's amazing to read about, because one, I get to like see how the movies work, but also like find inspiring role models I can Google and like research and maybe even connect with them as well.
That's awesome. And our first team should definitely go read that one, considering like Star Wars was our main sponsor this year. But yeah, that's so great. Well, I'm so impressed with all that you're doing, and I'm like, I'm ready to like join you guys. Like I want to do this. This is
the ops team, right?
Cool.
Finance team.
We'll figure it out. But just thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you for joining us today to share your stories. We really appreciate you being here and all the work that you're doing to encourage women in STEM.
Well, and Devin, to check it out, you can actually, I think, look at the first issue. Erin, were you going to mention that?
Yeah, yep. So again, Devin, thank you for having us for sure. And just to get kind of a peek, just because COVID-19 happened and everybody has transitioned to like remote learning and everything, if you go to our website, it'll pop up when you first visit it. You can fill out a form and you get a free digital copy of our first issue. And so that's the one with Megan Smith as a feature. There's a really cool DIY project at the end by one of our kind of partner nonprofits too. So you could take that STEM and take it home with you. So if you go to our website and fill out that form, you can kind of get that sneak peek into what we're doing.
That's very exciting. I think I actually was just downloading it earlier. So that's like my thing to read over the weekend. So I'm excited about it. But great. Well, thank you so much again. We really appreciate your time and staying a couple minutes over also. But Renee?
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much. And at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Chris for final announcements and we can wrap tonight up. And ladies, I hope you have a wonderful weekend, continuing to reinvent, the world. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks to all of our fabulous participants today. Some great content. And just one last reminder again, next week will be 6:30 to 8 p.m. Eastern time with our awards virtual showcase right here on the twitch.tv/First in Robotics. And then Friday, May 1st will be our senior celebration, celebrating the FRC and FTC seniors. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight, and to all of our participants and everyone out there, have a fantastic weekend. Stay safe and healthy. Thank you.